Execution failed. Blade shattered on his neck. Deku yawned and asked to go home to his wife. Meet Izuku Midoriya, Gabimaru's reincarnation, legendary assassin, walking war crime, and simp of the damn century. White hair, dead eyes, fire powers that melt everything, and a wife he'd burn the whole fucking world for. The villains are cooked, literally.
Welcome, legends, to Chronos Recom. I wrote this story myself, so if you have any suggestions or what-ifs you want to see, drop it in the comments below. Also, just wanted to let you know I've got a Patreon set up now for anyone who wants to support the channel directly. You can get early access to stories, submit direct fan requests, and get exclusive content. It's totally optional, but if you want to help keep these stories coming, check it out. Links in the description. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and hit that bell so you never miss an upload. Let's dive into this story.
The execution chamber sat 40 meters beneath the headquarters of Japan's Public Safety Commission. No windows, no natural light, just cold concrete walls stained with decades of old blood, a single overhead fluorescent that buzzed like a dying insect, and the faint smell of iron that never went away no matter how many times they mopped the floors. Izuku Midoriya knelt in the center of the room, shirtless, his wrists bound behind his back with reinforced titanium chains, the kind they used on high-end Nomu containment units. His ankles were locked into steel cuffs bolted directly into the concrete floor. A thick leather collar circled his neck, attached to a post behind him by 3 separate chains. He looked small. That was the first thing people always noticed. 5'5", lean, built like a welterweight fighter, not a monster. His white hair hung over his forehead in messy strands that just long enough to cover his eyes if he tilted his head. His skin was pale, almost unhealthy, but the scars told a different story. They covered his torso like a roadmap of violence. Long slashing marks across his ribs, circular burn scars on his shoulders, a jagged line running from his collarbone to his navel that looked like someone had tried to gut him with a serrated blade, stab wounds, bullet wounds, chemical burns. His body was a museum of every way a human being could be hurt, and he was 19 years old. The executioner standing in front of him was a big man. 6'3", 240 pounds, arms like tree trunks. He held a specially forged blade designed to cut through quirk-enhanced flesh. The edge gleamed under the fluorescent light. The executioner had done this job for 11 years. He'd put down villains, war criminals, rogue agents. He was good at what he did. His hands were shaking. Prisoner 0077, a voice crackled over the intercom. Izuku Midoriya, codename The Hollow. You have been sentenced to death for 213 confirmed kills carried out under the direction of the Public Safety Commission's Black Operations Division. Do you have any final words? Izuku lifted his head. His eyes were green, pale green like sea glass, but there was nothing behind them. No fear, no anger, no defiance, just a flat, empty stare that made the executioner take a half step back despite himself. Yeah, Izuku said. His voice was quiet, bored. Can we speed this up? My wife is making curry tonight, and I told her I'd be home by 6. The executioner swallowed hard. He looked at the observation window where 3 commission officials sat behind reinforced glass. One of them gave a curt nod. The executioner raised the blade. His muscles tensed. He brought it down with everything he had, a clean diagonal strike aimed at the junction of neck and shoulder. Perfect form. Perfect angle. Enough force to cut through a steel beam. Clang. The sound rang through the chamber like a church bell. The executioner stumbled backward, his arms vibrating from the impact. He looked down at the blade. It was shattered. The edge had crumpled like tinfoil against Izuku's neck, leaving a line of broken steel fragments on the floor. Not a scratch, not a mark, not even a red line on Izuku's skin. Huh, Izuku said. He glanced at the broken blade on the floor. That one lasted longer than the last 3. Behind the observation glass, one of the officials pressed a button. Bring in the backup methods. What followed was 2 hours that the official reports would later describe as comprehensive termination attempts. What it actually looked like was a comedy of errors that would have been funny if it wasn't so deeply unsettling. They tried a second blade. It broke. They tried a third blade, this one heated to 1500 degrees. It broke and the handle melted. They brought in a man with a compression quirk who could generate 20 tons of crushing force per square inch. He squeezed Izuku's head between his palms until the veins in his own temples bulged and burst. Izuku blinked at him. "You've got a nosebleed," Izuku observed. They tried fire. A quirk user who could generate flames hot enough to melt titanium blasted Izuku point blank for 45 seconds. When the flames cleared, Izuku was sitting in exactly the same position. His chains had melted. The concrete around him was glowing orange. His hair wasn't even singed. "That was warm," Izuku said, "almost pleasant." They tried poison. 3 different kinds. Izuku's body burned through the toxins before they could reach his organs. They tried electrocution. The current arced off his skin and fried the generator. They tried suffocation. He held his breath for 22 minutes before they gave up. By the end of hour 2, the execution chamber looked like a war zone. Broken blades littered the floor. The walls were scorched. 2 of the quirk user executioners were in the infirmary. 1 had quit on the spot. Izuku sat in the middle of it all, cross-legged now since his chains were gone, picking at a callus on his palm. "Are we done?" he asked. "Because the curry." "Yes," the intercom voice said, strained. "We're done. For now." Izuku yawned. He cracked his neck to the left, then to the right. The pops echoed in the silent chamber. Then he closed his eyes and waited. He was good at waiting. 3 days passed. They tried more methods. A quirk that disintegrated organic matter. A weapon that vibrated at frequencies designed to shatter molecular bonds. An experimental drug that was supposed to stop his heart. None of it worked. His body rejected death the way a healthy immune system rejected a common cold. Automatically. Effortlessly. Without him even trying. On the 4th day, the door to his holding cell opened and someone new walked in. The creature was small, white-furred, had a scar across one eye and wore a tiny suit and tie. Principal Nezu of UA high school looked like a stuffed animal that had wandered out of a children's store. But his eyes were sharp. Calculating. The intelligence behind them was vast and slightly terrifying. The kind of intelligence that saw people as variables in equations. Nezu hopped up onto the metal table across from Izuku's bench and sat down, his little legs dangling over the edge. He had a manila folder in his paws. It was thick. "Izuku Midoriya," Nezu said, his voice pleasant and chipper, like a kindergarten teacher about to explain finger painting. "Born July 15th, blood type O, no registered quirk. Recruited by the Commission's Black Ops Division at age 6. First confirmed kill at age 8. 213 confirmed kills by age 17. Codenamed The Hollow for your, and I'm quoting the file here, complete absence of emotional response during operations." Fascinating reading, really. Izuku stared at him with those flat green eyes. "What do you want?" Nezu smiled. It was a strange expression on a mouse bear dog face. "I want to offer you a job." "Not interested." "You haven't heard the offer." "I don't need to. I'm done working for people." Nezu flipped open the folder and pulled out a photograph. He slid it across the table. Izuku's eyes dropped to it, and for the first time in 4 days, something moved behind his expression. The tiniest flicker. A candle flame in a dark room. The photograph showed a girl. Blonde hair pulled into 2 messy buns, golden eyes, a wide, bright smile that took up half her face. She was wearing an oversized sweater and holding up a peace sign at the camera. "Himiko Toga," Nezu said. "Age 19. Blood quirk, transform. Allows her to take on the appearance of anyone whose blood she ingests. Classified as a dangerous quirk by the registry. Currently living at..." He rattled off an address. "Your apartment, yes? A small place. 2 rooms. She's been paying rent by working at a convenience store. She visits this facility every day to ask about you. They turn her away at the gate every time." Izuku's jaw tightened. It was subtle, barely visible, but Nezu caught it. "She was crying yesterday, I'm told," Nezu added almost casually. The temperature in the room dropped. The actual temperature dropped. The air around Izuku shifted. Tao, his life energy, the force that flowed through every living thing, the power he'd carried from a life he'd lived centuries ago, in a body that wasn't this one, rippled outward like a stone dropped in still water. The metal table vibrated. The fluorescent light flickered. "Choose your next words carefully," Izuku said. His voice hadn't changed. Still quiet, still flat. But the killing intent that radiated from his body was suffocating. It pressed against the walls. It made the air thick. The two guards standing by the door both took involuntary steps back, their hands going to their weapons. Nezu didn't flinch. If anything, his smile widened. I'm not threatening her, Midoriya. Quite the opposite. I'm offering you the chance to go home to her. Izuku's eyes narrowed. Talk. Nezu folded his paws on the table. The commission wants you dead. You know too much. You've done too much. You're a liability. The problem is... He gestured vaguely at the scorched walls and broken weapons still littering the hallway outside. They can't actually kill you, so they're stuck. And when bureaucrats get stuck, they get creative. The current plan being discussed involves indefinite containment. A cell beneath this building. No visitors, no sunlight, no contact with the outside world. Forever. He paused to let that sink in. And Miss Toga, well, she has a dangerous quirk and known associations with a condemned assassin. It wouldn't take much to classify her as a threat. To disappear her into a facility of her own, separately of course, they'd never let you see each other again. The killing intent doubled, tripled. The metal table bent in the middle. One of the guards passed out. The other pressed himself against the wall, gasping like a fish on dry land. Nezu sat perfectly still in the middle of it, sipping from a cup of tea that had appeared in his paw from nowhere. However, Nezu said, I have a counter-proposal, one that benefits everyone, especially you and Miss Toga. The pressure receded, not gone, held back like a tsunami being kept at bay by sheer willpower. I'm listening, Izuku said. UA High School, the hero course. You enroll as a first-year student. Izuku blinked. It was the most emotion he'd shown in days. You want me to be a hero. I want you to attend a school. The hero part is up to you. But here's what you get in return. Full pardon. Every kill, every mission, every black mark in this file. Erased. Complete immunity from prosecution. A clean identity. Government housing. An upgrade from that 2-room apartment, I assure you. And most importantly, Miss Toga gets the same protections. Her quirk gets reclassified. No more registry watch list, no more commission surveillance. You both get to live normal, peaceful lives. And what do you get? Nezu tilted his head. I get the most capable student in UA history. I get to study what makes you tick, and I get to take a weapon the commission built and turn it into something better. Call it professional curiosity. Izuku stared at him for a long time. The room was silent, except for the unconscious guard's breathing and the buzz of the damaged fluorescent light. If I do this, Izuku said slowly, Himiko is safe. Completely. No one touches her. Not a soul, and I can go home to her. Every day. You'll be a day student. No dormitory requirement. You go to class, you go home. Simple as that. Izuku closed his eyes. For a moment he was somewhere else. A different time. A small apartment. The smell of curry. Warm hands on his face. A voice like sunlight saying, I love you, you know? When he opened his eyes, they were different, still pale green, still flat, but there was something behind them now. A small, stubborn flame that refused to go out. Deal. Nezu hopped off the table and straightened his tie. Wonderful. The entrance exam is in 3 weeks. I'll have someone bring you a uniform catalog. Oh, and Midoriya? Izuku looked at him. Welcome to UA. The door closed behind Nezu. Izuku sat alone in the cell. He leaned his head back against the concrete wall and let out a long, slow breath. I'm coming home, Himiko. 2 years earlier, rain hammered Tokyo like it had a grudge. The kind of rain that turned streets into rivers and made umbrellas useless. The kind that washed the blood off the sidewalks by morning. Izuku Midoriya stood on the roof of a 12-story apartment building, looking down at the city. He was 17. He was soaking wet. He was covered in blood that wasn't his. The mission had been simple. 3 targets. A Yakuza boss and his 2 lieutenants who'd been supplying Trigger, a quirk-enhancing drug, to street gangs across Shinjuku. The commission wanted them gone. Quietly. Izuku had done it in 9 minutes. He'd come through the window of their penthouse suite like a ghost. Tau suppressed, moving in the spaces between their bodyguards' heartbeats. The first lieutenant died before he knew anyone was in the room. The second had time to draw a gun. Izuku broke his wrist, then his neck in one fluid motion. The boss had a hardening quirk. His skin turned to stone when he activated it. Izuku punched through it like wet paper. 9 minutes. 3 bodies. No witnesses. Now he stood on the roof with their blood drying on his hands and forearms, and he felt nothing. Not guilt, Not satisfaction, not disgust, nothing. A void where emotions were supposed to be. He'd been this way for as long as he could remember. The Commission's trainers had called it a gift. His handlers called it his greatest asset. The other operatives called him a monster behind his back and sometimes to his face. The Hollow. Empty inside, nothing there but skill and violence. He should go back. File his report. Get debriefed. Sleep. Do it again tomorrow. Instead, he stood in the rain and tried to feel something. Anything. He focused on the cold water hitting his skin, on the sound of thunder rolling across the sky, on the lights of the city spread out below him like scattered jewels. Nothing. He turned to leave and stopped. There was a girl on the other side of the roof. She was sitting on the ledge with her legs dangling over a 12-story drop, which would have been alarming enough on its own. But she was also injured. Even through the rain, Izuku could see the bandages wrapped around her arms, the bruises on her face, the way she held herself like everything hurt. She was wearing a school uniform, middle school from the look of it, that was soaked through and torn at the sleeve, and she was talking to herself. "Stupid," she muttered, her voice barely audible over the rain. "Stupid, stupid, stupid. Why do you always mess everything up?" Izuku should have left. He had no business being on this roof. He was covered in blood. He was a government assassin, fresh off a triple homicide. Every protocol he'd ever been taught told him to disengage and extract. But something made him pause. Something he couldn't identify because he'd never felt it before. She looked lonely. It was a strange thought for a person who'd never understood loneliness to have. But there it was. She sat on that ledge like she was the last person left in the world, and something about that image lodged itself in his chest like a splinter. "The ledge is wet," he said. She jumped, nearly fell. He moved fast, faster than anyone should be able to move, and his hand closed around her wrist before she could tip forward. He pulled her back onto the roof with zero effort, like she weighed nothing. She stumbled, caught her balance, and looked up at him with wide golden eyes. Her hair was blonde, messier than it probably normally was, stuck to her face by the rain. Her cheeks were hollow. She looked like she hadn't eaten properly in a while. Then she looked down at his hand on her wrist, at the blood. Her eyes changed, not with fear, which was what Izuku expected. Something else, something he couldn't read. "Is that blood?" she asked. Izuku let go of her wrist and stepped back. "You should be more careful." "Whose blood is it?" "Nobody's." She tilted her head. A strange, curious gesture that reminded him of a cat examining something new. "You're lying, but that's okay. I'm used to liars." She paused. "I'm Toga. Himiko Toga." He didn't answer. "This is the part where you tell me your name," she said. "You should go home. Don't have one." That splinter in his chest pushed deeper. He looked at her again. Really looked. The bruises weren't from a fight. They were too old, too layered, too systematic. Someone had been hurting her regularly for a long time. "Your parents?" he asked. Her smile was bright and completely empty. He recognized it because he wore the same kind of smile, the kind that existed on the surface and went nowhere. "They don't really want me around anymore. Because of my quirk. It makes people uncomfortable." She held up her hand. Her fingertips had small cuts on them, self-inflicted from the precision of the marks. "I need blood to use it, to transform into other people. Everyone thinks it's creepy. My parents, my teachers, the kids at school, they look at me like I'm a monster." Monster, Izuku knew that word. He'd worn it like a second skin his entire life. "What did you do?" he asked. Not judgmental, just asking. "I drank a boy's blood. It's that I liked him and I wanted to be close to him and my quirk. I couldn't help it. It's like being hungry, you know? Like your body needs it and your brain says no, but your body doesn't listen." And he screamed. And everyone screamed, and they called the police, and my parents, her voice cracked. She pressed her palms against her eyes. They said I was broken, that something was wrong with me, that I shouldn't have been born like this. The rain fell. Thunder rolled. The city hummed below them, indifferent to two damaged people standing on a rooftop in the dark. Izuku reached into his back pocket and pulled out the only personal item he carried on missions. A protein bar. He'd been saving it for the walk back to headquarters, but he held it out to her. Toga looked at the protein bar, looked at his blood-stained hand, looked at his face, at his flat, empty eyes and white hair and scarred body. She took the protein bar. "You're weird," she said. Yeah. You're not scared of me? No? Why not? He thought about it. It was a genuine question, and he didn't have a rehearsed answer. I've never been scared of anything, he said finally. I don't think I know how. She unwrapped the protein bar and took a bite. Chewed, swallowed, took another bite. She ate like someone who hadn't had food in days, fast and desperate, but trying to hide it. I'm Izuku, he said. He didn't know why he said it. He'd never given his real name to anyone outside the commission. Izuku Midoriya. Izuku, she repeated and smiled. A different smile this time. Smaller. Realer. That's a nice name. He didn't know what to do with that. No one had ever called any part of him nice. Come on, he said and started walking toward the roof access door. Where are we going? I know a place that's dry. He didn't bring her to headquarters. Obviously, best fry. He brought her to the safe house he maintained off the books, a small, bare apartment in Naruhara that the commission didn't know about. One room, a bathroom, a kitchen that was mostly just a hot plate and a mini fridge. No decorations. No personal items. It looked like no one lived there because, emotionally speaking, no one did. Toga stood in the doorway and looked around. It's very empty. Yeah, like you. He looked at her. She looked back, unblinking, not mean, just honest. Yeah, he said again. He gave her the bed. He slept on the floor. He didn't sleep much anyway. In the morning, she was still there. He'd half expected her to leave in the night or to steal whatever she could carry and disappear. Instead, she was in the kitchen, standing on her tiptoes to reach the cabinet above the hot plate. You don't have any food, she announced. I eat at work. What do you do for work? Pest control. She gave him a look that said she didn't believe him for a second, but wasn't going to push it. Well, pest control, Izuku. I'm going to go buy groceries. Do you have money? He pointed at a drawer. She opened it, found a stack of bills, his mission payment from 2 operations ago that he'd never bothered to deposit, and her eyes went wide. There's like 2 million yen in here. Take what you need. She stared at him. You're either the nicest person I've ever met or the dumbest. Probably the second one. She bought groceries. She cooked. It was simple. Rice, eggs, miso soup. But it was the first home-cooked meal Izuku had eaten since he was 6 years old. He sat at the small table and ate, tried to understand the strange warmth in his chest that had nothing to do with the food. She didn't leave that day. Or the next. Or the next. Somehow, without either of them making a conscious decision about it, Toga moved in. She claimed the bed. She organized the kitchen. She bought curtains, yellow ones with little flowers on them, and hung them on the window. She put a small potted plant on the windowsill that she watered every morning. She filled the empty apartment the way color fills a black and white photograph. And Izuku kept coming home to her. After missions, after briefings, after long nights in the rain doing terrible things for terrible people, he'd open the door to the apartment and she'd be there. Sometimes cooking. Sometimes watching TV on the secondhand set she'd bought from a pawn shop. Sometimes just sitting on the bed reading manga, her feet tucked underneath her. And she'd look up and smile at him and say, "Welcome home, Izuku-kun." And something inside him that he'd thought was dead would twitch. Weeks became months. He started noticing things, the way she hummed while she cooked, the specific shade of gold in her eyes when sunlight hit them, the way she always left the bathroom light on at night because she was afraid of the dark but would never admit it, the way she laughed, big, loud, unapologetic, filling every corner of the small apartment. He started doing things he'd never done, coming home earlier, bringing her small things he found on missions, a hairpin from a shop in Osaka, a keychain shaped like a cat, a scarf that matched her eyes. He didn't know how to give gifts. He'd just set them on the table without a word and walk away. She'd find them and squeal and put them on immediately, and he'd look away so she wouldn't see the expression on his face. He didn't know what expression it was. He'd never made it before. 6 months in, she asked him what he really did for work. He told her. All of it. Every mission. Every kill. Every drop of blood. He told her about the commission, the Black Ops division, the codename. He told her he was a weapon. A tool. A thing shaped like a person but hollow on the inside. She listened without interrupting. When he was done, she was quiet for a long time. "Do you want to stop?" she asked. "I don't know how to be anything else." "That's not what I asked." He closed his eyes, opened them. Yes. She nodded. Like it was that simple. Like wanting was enough. It wasn't, of course. The commission didn't let their assets retire. But that conversation planted a seed in the hollow space behind his ribs, and it grew. Then came the night that changed everything. The night he came home from the mission that broke him. It was a month later. The target had been a woman, a doctor who'd been selling quirk-suppressing drugs on the black market. Simple job, in and out. But when Izuku got to her apartment, she wasn't alone. She had a daughter, 5 years old, pink hair, big eyes. The daughter saw him. She screamed. The doctor tried to run. Izuku completed the mission. He always completed the mission. But the girl's scream followed him out of the apartment and down the street and across the rooftops and all the way back to Naruhara, where he opened the door to his apartment and stood in the entryway, unable to move. He was covered in blood. It was on his hands, his shirt, his face. And for the first time in his life, he could feel it. The weight of it. Every drop, Toga was on the couch. She looked up. Her smile faded when she saw his face. Izuku-kun, he sat down next to her. He stared at his hands. He tried to speak and couldn't. His throat was locked. His body was shaking, actually shaking, something it had never done. Not under torture, not under fire, not under anything. He reached out, slowly, stiffly, like a machine running a program it didn't have software for. He placed his hand on Toga's head. His bloodied, trembling hand on her soft blonde hair. The gesture was wrong. Awkward. His fingers were rigid. He pressed too hard, then too soft. He'd seen people do this, fathers to children, lovers to partners, but he'd never done it himself. His body didn't know the mechanics of tenderness. Toga blinked up at him. Izuku-kun? What are you doing? I don't know, he whispered. I saw it on TV. I thought people do this when they... He couldn't finish. His hand fell away. He clenched his fists in his lap. I have taken so many lives, he said. His voice was raw, cracked in places it had never cracked before. My hands are stained, every finger, every knuckle. There is blood in the lines of my palms that will never wash out. He stared at the floor. I am not a person, Himiko. I am a weapon that someone forgot to put away. I don't deserve this. I don't deserve a normal life. I don't deserve to sit on this couch next to you and pretend that I'm anything other than what they made me. The apartment was quiet. The yellow curtains shifted in a breeze from the cracked window. The potted plant on the windowsill cast a small shadow in the lamplight. Toga reached out and took his bloodied hand. She lifted it. She pressed it against her cheek, his blood smeared on her skin. She didn't flinch, didn't pull away. She held his hand there, her small fingers wrapped around his wrist, and she looked up at him with those golden eyes and smiled. You're silly, Izuku. He stared at her. Who decides what you deserve? Some people in suits? The commission? Them? She shook her head, his hand still against her cheek. They don't get to decide. Nobody does. Not even you. She turned her face into his palm and pressed her lips against the center of it. A soft, warm kiss on skin that had killed hundreds. You're not a monster to me, she said against his hand. You're just you. A boy who gave a hungry girl a protein bar in the rain. A boy who leaves little gifts on the table because he doesn't know how to say nice things out loud. A boy who comes home to me every night. She looked up at him. Everyone deserves one person who accepts them. I'm yours. Himiko. I love you, you know? The words hit him harder than any blow he'd ever taken. Harder than blades, harder than bullets, harder than the experimental weapons they'd tested on his body. 3 words and they cracked something open inside him that had been sealed shut since he was 6 years old. His vision blurred, his eyes burned. Something hot and wet tracked down his cheek and he realized with genuine shock that he was crying. He hadn't cried since he was a child. He'd forgotten the sensation. It felt like drowning in reverse. He leaned forward and pressed his forehead against hers. Their noses touched. He could feel her breath on his lips. His hand was still on her cheek, her hand still holding his wrist. I love you too, Himiko, he said. The words came out broken, uneven, like he was speaking a language he'd only just learned. I love you. She kissed him, or he kissed her. He could never remember who moved first. It didn't matter. What mattered was that for the first time in his life, the hollow space behind his ribs wasn't empty anymore. The next day, he submitted his resignation to the commission. Didn't take it well. He killed the first 12 operatives they sent, then the next 8. Then the specialized squad with the quirk-dampening equipment that didn't work on him because his abilities weren't a quirk. They came from Tao, from a life he'd lived centuries ago on an island of monsters and gods, where he'd learned to bend the energy of life itself to his will. The Commission threw everything they had at him: enhanced soldiers, prototype weapons, quirk users bred specifically for combat. He burned through them like fire through paper. When the body count hit 40, they stopped sending people and started negotiating. The deal was simple. He'd turn himself in, submit to execution, let them try to kill him. If they could, problem solved. If they couldn't, well, that would be someone else's problem. He agreed because he was tired of fighting. Not physically tired. His body didn't really get tired, but tired in a way that lived in his bones. He kissed Toga at the door of their apartment and told her he'd be back soon. Promise? She asked. Promise. Now, sitting in his cell at the Commission's facility, 3 weeks out from the UA entrance exam, Izuku Midoriya clenched his fist and felt the phantom warmth of her lips on his palm. "I will protect that life," he said to the empty room. "No matter what." The 3 weeks passed quickly. Nezu was efficient. Within 48 hours of their conversation, Izuku had a new identity established in every government database. His criminal record didn't just disappear, it had never existed. Izuku Midoriya was now, according to every official document in Japan, a 19-year-old from Shizuoka Prefecture with a quirk registered as vitality manipulation, a convenient half-truth that explained his durability and physical abilities without revealing the full scope of what he could do. Toga's records were similarly cleaned. Her quirk was reclassified from dangerous restricted to transformation standard, so the surveillance on her apartment was lifted. The registry watchlist flag was removed. On paper, Himiko Toga was just a normal girl with a slightly unusual quirk, working at a convenience store, waiting for her partner to come home. Nezu also arranged for them to move into a small house in Musutafu, close to UA's campus. 2 bedrooms, a proper kitchen, a little garden out back. Toga cried when she saw it. Izuku stood in the living room and tried to comprehend owning a house. He'd never owned anything that wasn't a weapon. On the morning of the entrance exam, Toga straightened the collar of his black jacket. He'd refused the standard exam attire in favor of a modified guy-style outfit, dark fabric, fitted close to his body, designed for maximum range of motion. Old habits. "You look very handsome," Toga said, adjusting his collar for the 3rd time. "I look like a mortician. A handsome mortician." She kissed his cheek. "Go pass your exam, Hollow-kun." "Don't call me that. Hollow-kun, Hollow-kun." He sighed. He looked at her. She was smiling that real smile, the small one, the one that was just for him. He leaned down and kissed her forehead. "I'll be home for dinner. You'd better be." He walked to UA. The campus was enormous. Sprawling concrete and glass buildings arranged around a central courtyard that was bigger than most city parks. Students swarmed the entrance, hundreds of teenagers, nervous, excited, chattering to each other about quirks and hero names and who they thought would get in. The energy was electric, hopeful. Izuku walked through the crowd like a ghost, head down, hands in his pockets, dead eyes staring at the pavement ahead of him. The other applicants gave him a wide berth without knowing why. Some instinct, buried deep in the animal part of their brains, told them not to get close. One person didn't listen to that instinct. Hey you! White hair!" Izuku stopped. A girl was jogging toward him through the crowd. Brown hair, round face, big eyes, flushed cheeks. She was bouncing on her feet with nervous energy, looking like she might vibrate out of her own skin. "You're taking the exam too, right?" she asked, slightly out of breath. "Are you nervous?" "I'm nervous. I'm so nervous I might throw up." "Ha! Wouldn't that be a great first impression?" "Oh, I'm Uraraka! Ochako Uraraka!" She stuck out her hand. Izuku looked at it. He looked at her face. He looked at her hand again. "Izuku Midoriya," he said, and didn't shake her hand. "Oh, okay. Cool name. So what's your quirk?" "Mine makes things float. Well, anything I touch, but I throw up if I overuse it," which is pretty lame, honestly. "What about yours?" "I kill things." Uraraka blinked. Then she laughed, loud and bright. "Oh man, you're funny. Good luck in the exam." She jogged off, waving. Izuku watched her go with a faint crease between his brows. Funny? Nobody had ever called him funny. They'd called him terrifying, inhuman, monstrous, abominable. Never funny. He filed the interaction away and kept walking. The written exam was first. 2 hours in a lecture hall. Izuku filled it out in 20 minutes. The commission's education program had been thorough, if nothing else, then put his head down on the desk and slept until the proctor called time. He dreamed about curry. Then came the practical exam. Present Mike. The voice hero, loud, blonde, perpetually amped up, explained the rules from a stage at the front of a massive auditorium. There would be faux villains in an artificial cityscape. 3 types: 1-pointers, 2-pointers, 3-pointers. Destroy them for points. There was also a 0-pointer. Massive, worth nothing, meant to be avoided. Plus ultra, listeners. Present Mike screamed into his microphone. The auditorium shook. Show us what you've got! The applicants were divided into groups and bused to different testing grounds. Izuku was in ground beta, a sprawling replica of an urban district, complete with buildings, streets, alleys, and intersections. He stood at the starting gate with about 40 other applicants. They stretched, they psyched themselves up. They discussed strategies in excited whispers. Izuku stood still with his hands in his pockets and stared at the gate. A tall boy with dark blue hair and glasses pushed through the crowd to stand next to him. His movements were sharp, robotic, precise. He adjusted his glasses with a chopping motion. "You there," the tall boy said, frowning at Izuku. "Your posture is atrocious. Hands out of your pockets. Show some respect for the exam process." Izuku turned his head just enough to look at him. The boy was a full head taller, broad-shouldered. He had engines in his calves, visible chrome exhaust poking out of his gym pants. "Who are you?" Izuku asked. "Tenya Ida, from Somei Private Academy. And you are?" "Not interested," Ida sputtered. Before he could recover, a massive horn blared and the gates opened. "Start!" Present Mike's voice thundered from hidden speakers. "What's wrong? There's no countdown in a real fight!" The applicants surged forward. Izuku didn't. He stood at the gate while 40 teenagers stampeded past him, screaming battle cries and activating quirks. Explosions, ice, laser beams. The sounds of combat erupted across the testing ground as the first wave of faux villains engaged the applicants. Izuku waited until the crowd was gone. Then he took his hands out of his pockets, he closed his eyes, breathed in, breathed out. His Tao stirred, not like a quirk activating, not like flipping a switch, more like a river that had been dammed, finding the tiniest crack and roaring through it. Energy flowed through his body, into his muscles, into his bones, into the spaces between his cells. He opened his eyes. He moved. To the cameras watching from above, Izuku Midoriya simply vanished. One frame he was standing at the gate, the next frame he was gone. No blur, no transition, just absence ninpo, the art of stealth. One of the core techniques he'd mastered in a life lived centuries ago, refined to perfection through 13 years of government assassination training. It wasn't speed, exactly. It was the ability to erase his presence entirely, to move in the gaps between perception, to exist in the blind spots of human. The first faux villain he encountered was a 3-pointer. A hulking green robot, 3 meters tall, bristling with fake weapons, stomping down a main street toward a group of struggling applicants. Izuku appeared in front of it like a jump cut in a film. His right hand shot forward, open-palmed. His fingers sank into the robot's chest plate like it was made of wet clay. He closed his fist around whatever was inside. Wires, circuits, a power core, and ripped it out. The robot toppled backwards, sparking dead. 3 points. He kept moving. Through streets, between buildings, across rooftops. Every faux villain he found died in a single strike. He didn't punch them. He dismantled them. A chop that severed a 1-pointer's head from its shoulders. A kick that caved in a 2-pointer's chest cavity. A palm strike that drove through a 3-pointer's armor and crushed its central processor. No wasted movement. No excess force. Every attack was precise, efficient, and devastating. He moved like water flowing downhill, always forward, always finding the path of least resistance, always arriving exactly where he needed to be, exactly when he needed to be there. In the observation room, a bank of monitors showed feeds from every testing ground. Dozens of UA. Staff watched the applicants, making notes, assigning scores, murmuring to each other about promising quirks and impressive techniques. One by one, they stopped what they were doing and turned to look at the feed from ground beta. "What the hell am I watching?" Midnight said, leaning forward in her chair. On screen, Izuku had just torn through 4 faux villains in the time it took a normal applicant to deal with one. He wasn't even running between them anymore. He was just appearing, here, there, everywhere, a ghost in a black GI, leaving trails of broken robots behind him. His speed is... That's not possible, Ectoplasm said, checking his data tablet. According to his file, his quirk is vitality manipulation, some kind of energy control. But this is beyond what any vitality-based quirk should be capable of. It's not just speed, Eraserhead said from the back of the room. His eyes were locked on the screen and hadn't blinked in over a minute. Watch his movement patterns. That's trained. Military trained. He's clearing the zone systematically. High-value targets first, working outward in concentric circles. That's not a teenager's strategy. That's a search and destroy protocol. Principal Nezu sat in a high chair at the center of the observation bank, sipping tea from a comically small cup. He said nothing. He just smiled. Izuku's kill count hit 50 in under 4 minutes. That's more than anyone has ever scored, Midnight said, in the history of the exam. He's still going, Eraserhead said. What's his name? All Might asked. The #1 hero was sitting in the corner of the room in his skeletal true form, thin and gaunt, watching the monitors with sunken eyes that betrayed sharp intelligence. Izuku Midoriya, Nezu said. He's a special case. Special, All Might repeated. On screen, Izuku caught a 2-pointer's punch in his bare hand, crushed the robot's fist like an aluminum can, then used the arm as a lever to flip the entire machine over his shoulder and slam it into the pavement so hard it left a crater. That's one word for it. Then the ground shook. The 0-pointer emerged from behind a row of buildings like a kaiju rising from the ocean. It was enormous. 30 meters tall, a skyscraper with treads, a mountain of steel and weapon systems that cast a shadow over the entire testing ground. It roared, or rather, its engines roared, a mechanical bellow that shattered windows and sent applicants scattering like ants. That's the 0-pointer, an applicant screamed. Run! They ran. All of them. Every applicant in ground beta turned and sprinted in the opposite direction, their exam scores suddenly irrelevant in the face of that metal titan, all except one. Izuku stood in the middle of the street, looking up at the 0-pointer. It was bearing down on him, close enough now that he could see every rivet in its armor, every lens in its sensor array. He checked his watch. This is taking too long, he said. Then he jumped. Not leaped. Not bounded. Jumped. Straight up, legs coiling and releasing with a force that cracked the pavement beneath his feet and sent a shockwave rolling outward that knocked the nearest fleeing applicants off their feet. He rocketed into the air like a missile, climbing 50 meters in under a second until he was level with the 0-pointer's head. The robot's sensor array swiveled to track him. Targeting systems locked on, Izuku flared his Tau. The applicants below felt it before they saw it. A wave of energy, invisible, intangible, but undeniable, that rolled outward from Izuku's body like the blast front of a nuclear detonation. It wasn't heat, wasn't force, wasn't anything they could name. It was presence. Raw, overwhelming, suffocating presence. The kind of thing that made every cell in your body scream danger. Then the fire came. It erupted from Izuku's body in a torrent. Not quirk fire, not the chemical combustion of a flame quirk. This was Tau made manifest. Life energy converted into heat and light, burning at temperatures that existed in the cores of stars. White flame wreathed his body, his arms, his legs. His eyes blazed with it. His white hair whipped in a wind that came from nowhere. Nimpo, he said quietly. He cocked his right leg. His body rotated. His hip, his core, his shoulder, everything aligned into a single devastating axis. Ascetic blaze. His foot connected with the 0-pointer's head. The effect was instantaneous. The steel didn't just break. It didn't just melt. It ceased to exist. At the point of impact, the metal flash heated past its melting point, past its boiling point, into a state of matter that didn't have a name outside of theoretical physics. The destruction radiated outward from the kick in a perfect sphere, a bubble of annihilation that consumed the 0-pointer's head, then its shoulders, then its chest, then everything. What had been a 30-meter war machine became a fountain of liquid metal and superheated gas that rained down over the testing ground like a miniature volcanic eruption. Chunks of molten steel splashed against buildings and instantly fused with them. The heat was so intense that the pavement below flash melted into glass. Izuku landed in the middle of the glassed street. The white fire guttered and died. His Tao settled back into its dormant state, flowing through his body like a quiet river. He wasn't even breathing hard. He dusted off his shoulder. One step closer to home. In the observation room, no one spoke for a very long time. All Might's skeletal hand was gripping the arm of his chair so hard the metal was bending. His sunken eyes were wide, not with fear, with recognition. He'd seen power like that before. Not this specific flavor, not this exact technique, but the scale, the absolute, overwhelming, undeniable scale of it. The kind of power that didn't belong to a category, didn't fit on a chart, didn't bow to the laws of physics as they were commonly understood. Nezu, All Might said quietly. What is that, boy? Nezu took a sip of tea. The future, I hope. The exam ended. Izuku scored 312 villain points, more than triple the previous record. The scoreboard had to be reformatted to fit his number. He also scored 60 rescue points that he didn't know about. During the exam, between robot kills, he'd pulled 3 applicants out of falling debris without slowing down. He hadn't thought about it, hadn't calculated it. He'd just seen them in danger and moved, the same way he breathed or blinked. Reflex, instinct, or maybe something else, something he was only just beginning to understand. On the walk home from the exam, he stopped at a convenience store and bought a bag of those little chocolate mushroom cookies that Toga liked. He carried them home in a plastic bag, swinging it gently at his side. I'm home, he said when he opened the door. Welcome home, Toga shouted from the kitchen. How was the exam? Did you beat everyone up? I melted a giant robot. That's my husband. He paused in the entryway. She'd started calling him that 6 months ago. They weren't legally married. Neither of them had documents clean enough for a marriage license at the time, but Toga had decided they were married, and that was that. She'd bought matching rings from a capsule machine at the arcade. His was blue, hers was pink. They were made of cheap plastic, and he wore his every day. Now, with Nezu's new identities and clean records, they could make it official. The thought hit him as he stood in the entryway of their new house, holding a bag of mushroom cookies, listening to Toga sing off-key in the kitchen. He'd bring it up later. Maybe. I brought cookies, he said. Cookies! She came barreling out of the kitchen and tackled him. He caught her easily. She did this every time he came home, launched herself at him like a heat-seeking missile, and held her while she grabbed the cookie bag out of his hand and immediately started eating them. You're getting crumbs in my hair, he said. Your hair deserves crumbs. It's too perfect. My hair looks like a mop. A perfect mop. He set her down. She stood on her tiptoes and kissed his chin. She couldn't quite reach his lips without him bending down, and she refused to ask him to bend down on principle. Dinner's almost ready, she said. I made curry. Of course she did. 2 weeks later, the acceptance letter arrived. Izuku had been assigned to Class 1A of the Hero course, the most competitive class in the most prestigious hero school in Japan. He stared at the letter for a long time. What's wrong? Toga asked, peering over his shoulder. Nothing. He folded the letter and put it in his pocket. I start Monday. You should smile more, she said. When you get to school, people like it when you smile. People run away when I smile. Then smile harder. Assert dominance. He looked at her. She grinned at him, all teeth and sunshine. He felt the corner of his mouth twitch. Not a smile. Not quite, but close enough. The first day of classes at UA started at 8:15 a.m. Izuku arrived at 8:14 because he didn't see the point in arriving earlier. He walked down the hallway of the main building with his hands in the pockets of his modified uniform. He'd kept the standard pants and shoes, but replaced the jacket with a dark, high-collared version that Toga had altered for him. It was close enough to regulation that no one could complain, but different enough to make a statement. The statement was, I don't belong here and I don't care. He found Classroom 1A. The door was massive, designed for students with size-altering quirks, probably. He slid it open, 20 desks, 19 students already seated. All of them turned to look at him. He stood in the doorway and let them look. White hair, pale green eyes, scars visible above his collar and below his sleeves. An expression that could charitably be described as dead, and accurately described as considering the structural weaknesses of this building. Oh, Uraraka waved from her desk. It's you! The funny guy from the entrance exam. Hi. Ida stood up from his desk and performed a rigid 90-degree bow. Izuku Midoriya, I owe you an apology for my rudeness at the exam. Your performance was exemplary and I misjudged you based on your posture. Sit down. Izuku said, a boy with spiky blonde hair and red eyes who'd been leaning back in his chair with his feet on his desk, snorted. Great, another extra. What's your deal, Snowflake? You look like you got lost on the way to a funeral. Izuku's gaze shifted the blonde boy. He assessed him in 0.3 seconds. Bakugo Katsuki. Quirk, explosion. Nitroglycerin-like sweat detonated at will. Powerful. Aggressive. Confident to the point of arrogance. Dangerous? No, not to him. Not to anyone in this room, honestly. Not compared to what Izuku had fought. My deal, Izuku said flatly, is that I want to sit down and wait for class to start. Move your feet off the desk. Bakugo's eye twitched. Small explosions crackled in his palms. You want to say that again, you... Move your feet. Something in Izuku's voice made the room go quiet. Not his volume, he was barely above a whisper, but the weight behind the words, the absolute bone-deep certainty that if those feet didn't move, something very bad was going to happen. Bakugo's feet came off the desk. He looked surprised at his own body, like his legs had moved without his permission. He opened his mouth to start shouting. The door opened again. A yellow sleeping bag rolled into the classroom. It stopped at the front of the room. A zipper opened. A head emerged. Shaggy black hair, bloodshot eyes, a 5 o'clock shadow that had graduated to a full-day shadow. It took you all 8 seconds to quiet down after I arrived, Shota Aizawa said, his voice a monotone rasp. That's 8 seconds wasted. Time is irrational if used poorly. He slithered out of the sleeping bag like a butterfly emerging from the world's most depressing cocoon. I'm your homeroom teacher, Aizawa. Get your gym clothes. We're doing a quirk assessment test. What about orientation? Uraraka asked. The ceremony. Waste of time. Orientation doesn't make you stronger. Testing does. His bloodshot eyes swept the room and landed on Izuku. They stayed there for a beat longer than anyone else. Izuku met his gaze. 2 sets of tired, dead eyes locked onto each other across the classroom. A moment of mutual recognition. 2 men who had seen too much and slept too little. Aizawa looked away first. Change. 5 minutes. Anyone late gets expelled. They changed. They went outside. Aizawa explained the test. 8 physical exercises, quirks allowed. The student who placed last would be expelled. Expelled? Several students said in alarm. Welcome to UA. The first test was the 50-meter dash. Izuku finished in 0.7 seconds. The timing system flagged an error. They ran it again. 0.7 seconds. The machine wasn't wrong. Aizawa stared at the readout. He didn't say anything. The second test was grip strength. The machine went to 999 kilograms. Izuku squeezed until it broke. The third test was the standing long jump. Izuku cleared the sandbox entirely and landed on the running track on the other side. 200 meters. By the 5th test, the other students had stopped doing their own exercises and were just watching him. What the hell is he? Kaminari whispered to Jiro. I don't know, but I'm glad he's on our side. Jiro whispered back. Bakugo wasn't whispering. He was standing at the edge of the field with his fists clenched, watching Izuku's numbers climb with an expression that cycled between fury and something that might have been fear if he'd been willing to admit it. The ball throw was the 7th test. Aizawa handed Izuku a softball. Throw it, Aizawa said. Anything goes, just stay in the circle. Izuku held the ball. He could feel the other students watching him. He didn't care about impressing them. He didn't care about the test. He cared about going home on time. He channeled Tao into his arm. Not a lot, just a thread. He threw the ball with a flick of his wrist, barely putting his shoulder into it. The ball disappeared. It accelerated so fast that it exceeded the tracking device's ability to follow it. There was a crack, a miniature sonic boom, and a trail of disturbed air that stretched from Izuku's hand to the horizon line. Aizawa's phone beeped. He looked at the number. He showed it to the class. It read, Infinity. It didn't come down, Aizawa said, his voice impressively flat for someone who'd just witnessed a teenager throw a ball into orbit. The tracker lost it at 43 kilometers altitude and still climbing. Silence. Dude, Kirishima said, that's so manly. That's not manly, Sero said. That's terrifying. Bakugo exploded, literally. His palms detonated and he charged at Izuku with a scream. You think you're better than me? Aizawa's capture weapon shot out and wrapped around Bakugo, binding him mid-charge. Aizawa's eyes glowed red, his erasure quirk active, nullifying Bakugo's explosions. "Calm down," Aizawa said, "or you're expelled." Bakugo seethed, but he stopped fighting. Aizawa released him and his quirk simultaneously. Izuku hadn't moved, hadn't flinched. He'd watched Bakugo's charge the way someone watches a fly land on their arm. "Are we done?" Izuku asked. "I have to be home by 5. Aizawa looked at him. Something complicated moved behind his tired eyes. "Yeah, we're done. Results are posted tomorrow." He paused. "Midoriya?" "What?" "You held back. It wasn't a question." Izuku met his eyes again. That silent recognition. "Obviously," Izuku said. Aizawa almost smiled. "Almost. Go home." Izuku went home. The next day, Aizawa announced that nobody was expelled. The threat had been a logical ruse, rational deception, he called it, designed to push the students to their limits. But his eyes lingered on Izuku when he said it, and Izuku understood the real message. "I know you're different. I'm watching you." Fine. Let him watch. Class 1A settled into a rhythm. Morning academics, afternoon hero training, occasional field exercises. Izuku did the minimum required to pass every assignment and not a fraction more. He didn't raise his hand, he didn't volunteer for demonstrations, he didn't socialize. He did, however, develop a reputation. It happened organically, the way reputations do. Whispers in the hallway. Stories passed between classes. "Did you hear about the kid in 1A who threw a ball into space?" "I heard he broke the grip strength machine. My friend saw him in the hallway and said he looked at her and she couldn't move for 10 seconds. He's scary. He's cool. He's both." The other students in 1A didn't know what to make of him. Uraraka kept trying to befriend him, and he kept giving her one-word answers that she interpreted as playing hard to get, rather than not interested in friends. Ida attempted to engage him in discussions about hero philosophy and received blank stares. Kirishima admired his strength openly and loudly. Yaoyorozu was academically curious about his quirk. Todoroki, the boy with the half-red, half-white hair and the permanent frown, watched him silently from across the room and said nothing. Bakugo hated him. This was not unusual. Bakugo hated most people, but his hatred for Izuku had a particular intensity. It was the hatred of a boy who had been the strongest person in every room he'd ever walked into, who had built his identity on being the best, confronted for the first time with someone who made his best look quaint. Izuku didn't care about any of it. He went to class. He went home. He ate Toga's cooking. He slept. He woke up. He did it again. Until the day everything changed. The Unforeseen Simulation Joint, USJ, was a massive training facility on UA's campus. It housed multiple disaster zones, a flood zone, a landslide zone, a fire zone, a storm zone, a mountain zone, and a central plaza. The whole thing was built by 13, the space hero, and it looked like someone had crammed 6 different apocalypses into one building. Class 1A arrived for a rescue training exercise. 13 was there. Aizawa was there. All Might was supposed to be there, but wasn't. He'd used up his time limit earlier that day, though the students didn't know that. 13 began explaining the exercise. Izuku stood at the back of the group and cataloged exits. 4 main doors, 6 emergency exits. The central plaza had minimal cover but good sight lines. The disaster zones provided natural choke points. If something went wrong, he could evacuate the class through the north exit in under 90 seconds. He was doing this automatically. Habit. He'd been trained to assess every space he entered for tactical advantages, escape routes, and kill zones since he was 6 years old. He couldn't turn it off. He didn't want to. His Tao stirred. It was subtle, a ripple in the flow of energy through his body, like a fish moving just below the surface of still water. Something was wrong. He could feel it the way you feel someone watching you from behind, a prickling at the base of your skull, an animal awareness that something had shifted in the environment. He looked at the central plaza. The air was darkening, not like a shadow, like a bruise. A point of blackness appeared at the center of the plaza, swirling, expanding, a portal, a warp gate. Aizawa, Izuku said. The teacher turned. He saw the portal. His expression didn't change. Aizawa's face was professionally blank, but his body shifted. Weight on the balls of his feet, capture weapon loose in his hands, combat ready. "Everyone stay back," Aizawa said. The portal widened, and they came through. Dozens of them. Villains, real villains, not training dummies, not faux robots, men and women with murder in their eyes and quirks already active. They spread across the plaza like a tide of violence, filling the space with noise and threat. Two figures stood at the front. The first was a man made of black mist. No body that Izuku could see, just a swirling mass of dark vapor contained vaguely in the shape of a person, with two glowing yellow eyes. The second was a young man, thin, pale, light blue hair that hung over his face in greasy strands. He wore multiple severed hands attached to his body. On his shoulders, his arms, his face, like grotesque accessories. His exposed skin was dry and cracked, his visible eye was bloodshot and manic, and behind them something else. Something big. It stood 8 feet tall, its body was black and muscular, skin stretched too tight over too many muscles, like a bodybuilder who'd been inflated past the point of human proportion. Its brain was exposed, a pink, pulsing mass visible through a gap in its skull. Its eyes were empty. Its beak-like mouth hung open. Izuku looked at it and felt his Tao react. Not with fear, with recognition. That thing was designed to kill. Everything about it, its posture, its musculature, the way its eyes tracked movement, screamed biological weapon. He'd fought things like this before. Not exactly like this, but close enough. Are those real villains? Kirishima said, his voice tight. 13, protect the students, Aizawa said. He pulled his goggles up. Midoriya. I see them, Izuku said. Aizawa glanced at him. A calculation behind his eyes. Don't engage. We'll see. Aizawa dropped into the plaza. He was fast. Faster than the students expected, and his capture weapon was already flying. The first villain went down in seconds, quirk erased and body-bound. Then the second, the third. Aizawa fought like a precision instrument, striking where it hurt, binding before they could recover, moving to the next target before the last one hit the ground. But there were too many of them. The mist villain, Kurogiri, Izuku heard the handman call him, expanded his body into a wall of darkness that surrounded the students at the top of the stairs. Warps opened. Students were sucked in and deposited across the various disaster zones, separated, confused, vulnerable. Izuku didn't get warped, not because the portal missed him, but because when the darkness tried to engulf him, his Tao flared and the portal bent around him like water around a stone. Kurogiri's fog recoiled from his body as if burned. Kurogiri noticed. His yellow eyes widened. Interesting, the mist villain murmured. You resisted my warp gate. That shouldn't be possible. A lot of things about me shouldn't be possible, Izuku said. He was standing exactly where he'd been before the attack, hands in his pockets, posture unchanged. The other students who hadn't been warped, Ida, a few others, were scrambling behind 13. You're an emitter type. Your body is your quirk, which means you have a physical form inside that mist somewhere. Kurogiri's eyes narrowed. Perceptive. I was trained to be. Izuku turned his gaze to the central plaza, where the real fight was happening. Aizawa was still engaging villains, but he was slowing down. His eyes were drying out from overuse of erasure. The mob was pressing him back, and the handman was watching, waiting, like a kid watching ants before he decided to step on them. Ida, Izuku said without looking back. Yes? Ida was wide-eyed, processing the situation, his engine calves already idling. Run. Go to the school. Get All Might. Get every teacher you can find. You're the fastest one here. But I can't just leave everyone. You're not leaving. You're the rescue. The fastest path to saving everyone in this building is getting reinforcements. Go. Now. Ida hesitated for 1 second. Then he nodded, turned, and ran. His engines fired. He was through the exit door in 3 seconds flat. Kurogiri moved to intercept. A wall of mist materialized in front of the door. It evaporated. Izuku was there, between Kurogiri and the exit, and his Tao was radiating from his body in visible waves. The air around him shimmered. Kurogiri's mist dissolved in his presence like frost in sunlight. Your mist is made of atoms, Izuku said. Atoms have energy. I can feel it, which means I can disrupt it. He looked at Kurogiri with those dead green eyes. You're not stopping anyone from leaving. Kurogiri pulled back, smart enough to recognize a threat he couldn't counter. 13! Izuku called over his shoulder. Protect whoever's left. Keep them at the entrance. What are you going to do? 13 asked. Izuku looked down at the central plaza, at Aizawa, who was fighting bravely but losing ground, at the mob of villains, at the handman who was scratching his neck with 5 fingers, agitated, excited, at the thing, the Nomu. standing behind its master like a living weapon waiting to be deployed. "What I'm good at," Izuku said. He stepped off the top of the stairs. He didn't fall. He descended, like gravity was a suggestion he'd chosen to take under advisement. His feet touched the plaza floor without a sound, and he began walking toward the center of the fight. The first villain to notice him was a man with a quirk that turned his arms into blades. He lunged at Izuku from the side, both arms swinging. Izuku caught the first blade between two fingers. He snapped it off. The man screamed. Izuku hit him once, open-palmed in the solar plexus. The man folded like a lawn chair and didn't get up. The next three villains attacked together. Some kind of coordinated rush, two from the front and one from behind. Izuku pivoted on his back foot, let the first two pass through the space where he'd been standing, grabbed the third by the face, and slammed him into the ground hard enough to crack the concrete. Then he turned and dropped the other two with a kick and an elbow strike, respectively. Neither blow took more force than swatting a fly. He kept walking. Villains fell around him like leaves in autumn. They attacked, and he dismantled them with the mechanical efficiency of someone taking apart a clock. No wasted energy, no unnecessary strikes. Every movement served a purpose. Hit here, they fall. Block here, they break. Move here, they miss. In 30 seconds, he'd cleared a path from the stairs to the center of the plaza. A dozen unconscious villains lay in his wake. He hadn't broken a sweat. Aizawa was on the ground, beaten. His arm was broken. The elbow bent the wrong way. Blood covered his face from a gash on his forehead. He'd taken out more villains than anyone had a right to expect from a single teacher against those odds, but the numbers had been too much. The handman was crouching next to him, one hand hovering over Aizawa's face. 5 fingers. All it would take was 5 points of contact, and his quirk, decay, would disintegrate whatever he touched. "You know," the handman said, his voice raspy and uneven, like he was having 3 conversations simultaneously and only one of them was out loud. "You're pretty cool for an NPC, Eraserhead, but the boss fight isn't with you." He looked up. Izuku was standing 10 meters away, hands at his sides, staring at him. The handman grinned. It was an ugly expression visible in the gap between the fingers of the hand covering his face. "Oh, a player character. Finally." "Shigaraki Tomura," Izuku said. He'd never met this man. He'd never heard his name before today. But he could read people the way other people read books, their posture, their quirk, their threat level. Leader, decay quirk, 5-point contact activation. You rely on that thing behind you for heavy combat. Shigaraki's grin widened. Smart, 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 smart. You know about Nomu? He was made to kill All Might, shock absorption, and super regeneration. A real boss-level enemy. Want to test him out? He snapped his fingers. The Nomu moved. It was fast. Faster than something that big should have been. It closed the 10-meter gap in a heartbeat, its massive fist already swinging in a haymaker that would have pulverized a concrete wall. The fist connected with Izuku's face. The shockwave blew outward. The ground cracked. The air compressed. Every villain within 20 meters staggered from the force of the impact. Izuku didn't move. The Nomu's fist was pressed against his cheek. His head hadn't turned. His feet hadn't shifted. He hadn't blinked. "Is that it?" he said. Shigaraki stopped scratching his neck. Izuku reached up and grabbed the Nomu's wrist. His fingers closed around the thick, muscular forearm with a grip that made the synthetic skin crackle and compress. He looked the Nomu in its empty eyes. "You are interrupting my schedule," he said. He twisted. The sound was hideous. Wet, grinding, crunching, the sound of reinforced bone and artificial muscle being wrenched past their breaking point. The Nomu's arm separated at the elbow. Not cleanly. Izuku tore it off the way you'd tear a drumstick off a rotisserie chicken, with force and a complete disregard for the thing's structural integrity. Black blood sprayed. The Nomu staggered back, its left arm ending in a ragged stump that was already bubbling with regeneration. New tissue formed. Muscle knitted, bone regrew. In seconds, a new arm was taking shape. "See?" Shigaraki said, his confidence returning. "Super regeneration. You can't kill him. Nobody can kill him. He was designed to." "Immortality," Izuku said, tossing the severed arm aside. "I know how to deal with that." He'd fought immortal things before. In another life, on another island, in a different body. He'd fought plant things that regenerated from a single cell. He'd fought beings that existed as pure energy without physical forms to destroy. He'd fought gods. This was just a Nomu. "I just have to kill you until you stay dead," Izuku said. He attacked. The first blow was a straight right to the Nomu's chest. Fire erupted from his fist on contact. Ascetic blaze compressed into the surface area of his knuckles, focused and directed with the precision of a laser. The Nomu's chest caved inward, its ribs shattered, its internal organs liquefied. The flesh around the impact point flash burned, turning black and then white and then nothing. The Nomu regenerated. Izuku hit it again. Same spot, same fire, same destruction. The regeneration started. He hit it a third time, a fourth. He was faster than the regeneration. That was the key. He wasn't trying to overpower the Nomu's healing factor. He was outpacing it. Each strike destroyed tissue faster than it could regrow. Each burst of ascetic blaze incinerated cells at a rate that exceeded the Nomu's biological reconstruction speed. 5 hits. 10. 20. The Nomu tried to fight back. It swung. Izuku slipped the punch by tilting his head 2 inches to the left. It kicked. He stepped inside the arc and drove his knee into its thigh, snapping the femur. It grabbed at him. He broke its fingers, one by one, fast enough that the first finger hadn't finished regenerating by the time he'd broken the 5th. He was taking the Nomu apart piece by piece and burning each piece to ash before it could reassemble. His Tao blazed through his body, fueling the ascetic blaze, turning his hands and feet into instruments of cremation. The Nomu's regeneration slowed, stuttered, started failing. Shigaraki watched with his mouth open. The hand over his face had slipped. His real face was visible, young, scarred, and for the first time, genuinely afraid. That's not possible, he whispered. Nomu was made to fight All Might. You can't just... He's not supposed to. Izuku hit the Nomu one last time. He didn't punch it. He placed his palm flat against the Nomu's exposed brain and released his Tao in a single, concentrated pulse. Not fire this time. Pure energy. The kind of energy that existed at the boundary between life and death, the fundamental force that animated every living thing. The Nomu's regeneration couldn't process it. The pulse disrupted the quirk at its source, not destroying tissue, but disrupting the biological instruction set that told the tissue how to rebuild. The regeneration collapsed. And without regeneration, the accumulated damage of 30 seconds of continuous destruction caught up all at once. The Nomu came apart. Not explosively, almost gently. Like a sandcastle losing cohesion. Its body slumped, then sagged, then disintegrated into ash and biological residue that scattered across the plaza floor. A thing that had been designed to kill the world's strongest hero, reduced to nothing by a 19-year-old with dead eyes and a wife waiting at home. Silence. The remaining villains stared. Aizawa stared. Kurogiri stared. Even the students who'd been watching from the top of the stairs stared. Shigaraki stared. "You," he rasped. His hand went to his neck, scratching hard enough to draw blood. "You weren't supposed to be here. This wasn't... The schedule said All Might would be here. All Might. Not, who are you? What are you?" Izuku looked at him. The Nomu's ash was still settling around his feet like gray snow. His hands were at his sides. His expression hadn't changed throughout the entire fight. The same flat, empty stare he'd worn since he walked into the building. "I'm a married man," he said, "and I'm late." He started walking toward Shigaraki. Shigaraki backpedaled. His hand shot out toward Kurogiri. "Get me out of here. Get me out. Now." "But Shigaraki Tomura, we still..." "Now!" Kurogiri's mist expanded. The portal opened. Shigaraki threw himself through it without looking back. Kurogiri followed, the mist swirling shut behind them, and then they were gone. The remaining villains, the ones still conscious, looked at each other, looked at the pile of ash that used to be the Nomu, looked at Izuku, and surrendered. Several of them put their hands up before anyone asked them to. One of them sat down on the ground and started crying. Izuku walked to Aizawa and knelt beside him. The teacher was conscious, but barely. His arm was twisted at an unnatural angle. Blood matted his hair. "You're going to be fine," Izuku said. He channeled a thin thread of Tao through his palm and pressed it against Aizawa's chest. Not healing. He couldn't heal, not exactly, but stabilizing. Reinforcing the teacher's own life energy, slowing the bleeding, keeping his body from going into shock. A technique he'd used on wounded allies in another life. "I told you not to engage," Aizawa whispered. "You did. And you did it anyway." Obviously. Aizawa's swollen eye opened a fraction. Good instincts. He passed out, Izuku stayed with him until the reinforcements arrived. All Might came through the door first, skeletal and strained but moving fast. Behind him, every available teacher. Ida had done his job. The aftermath was loud and chaotic. Paramedics, police, investigators, media vans parked outside. Students being checked for injuries, statements being taken, the USJ being cordoned off as a crime scene. Izuku gave his statement in flat, clinical sentences. He described the attack, the villains, the Nomu, the Warp Gate villain, the Hand Man. He left out nothing. He embellished nothing. When the detective, a man named Tsukauchi with a truth detection quirk, asked him how he defeated the Nomu, Izuku said, "I hit it until it stopped regenerating." Tsukauchi's quirk confirmed it was true. It just didn't seem like it should be. All Might found Izuku afterward. The number one hero was in his true form, thin, gaunt, blood at the corner of his mouth, standing in a corridor away from the cameras. "Young Midoriya," All Might said. Izuku stopped. "What you did today was extraordinary. That Nomu was engineered to match me, to kill me, and you destroyed it in seconds." "It was poorly designed," Izuku said. "Shock absorption without shock redirection means it can take hits, but can't counter them. Super regeneration without any defensive mechanism means you just need to outdamage the healing factor. The person who built it understood power, but not combat." All Might stared at him. "You sound like you fought things like that before." Izuku looked at him. For a moment, something ancient moved behind his eyes, something that didn't belong to a 19-year-old. A weight of experience that spanned more than one lifetime. "I have," he said, in a manner of speaking. All Might was quiet for a moment. Then he smiled. Not the big public smile, but a small, genuine one. "I was going to ask if you were all right, but I suspect that's a silly question." "I'm fine. Can I go home? My wife is making tonkatsu." All Might blinked. "Your wife?" "Good night, All Might." Izuku walked away. All Might watched him go. Then he laughed, a thin, wheezy sound that turned into a cough. "His wife," he said to the empty corridor. "The most dangerous student in UA history, and he just wants to go home to his wife." Izuku went home. Toga was waiting at the door. She'd seen the news. The USJ attack was all over every channel, though details were sparse. She didn't say anything. She pulled him inside, sat him on the couch, and climbed into his lap. She wrapped her arms around his neck and buried her face in his shoulder and held on. He held her back. His arms were gentle. The same hands that had destroyed a bioengineered weapon of mass destruction 30 minutes ago held this girl like she was made of glass. "I'm okay," he said. "I know you are. I'm not worried about you." Her voice was muffled against his shoulder. "I'm worried about the people who messed with you." He almost smiled. Almost. They ran. Smart. They sat like that for a while. The TV played in the background. The tonkatsu slowly went cold on the kitchen table. Neither of them cared. "Izuku?" Toga said eventually. Are you happy? At the school?" He thought about it. The question was harder than it should have been. Happy was a word that still felt foreign in his mouth, like a food he hadn't tasted enough times to know if he liked it. "I'm not unhappy," he said. "That's not the same thing." "No, it's not." He pressed his lips against the top of her head. "But I'm trying. Is that enough?" She pulled back to look at his face. She put her hands on his cheeks, small, warm hands on his scarred skin. "Yeah," she said. "That's enough." The weeks after the USJ incident were strange. Izuku had expected things to go back to normal. He'd expected to fade back into the background of Class 1A, unremarkable, unnoticed, just another student running out the clock until he could go home. That didn't happen. The USJ footage leaked. Not the official recordings. Those were sealed by the police. But someone had recorded the fight on their phone. A shaky, chaotic video that showed Izuku tearing the Nomu's arm off, standing in a corona of white fire, reducing the bioweapon to ash with his bare hands. It went viral in 3 hours. 12 million views in the first day. 50 million by the end of the week. The internet lost its collective mind. "The Hollow strikes again," one headline read. Someone had dug up his old codename, though how they'd gotten it from sealed commission files was anyone's guess. Others were less dramatic. UA student defeats anti-All Might weapon. Who is Izuku Midoriya? The strongest first year in history. Izuku ignored all of it. He went to class. He went home. He ate dinner with Toga. The fame bounced off him like every execution method had bounced off his skin, but it affected the people around him. Bakugo became quieter. not calmer. He still detonated at the slightest provocation, and his vocabulary was still 60% profanity, but quieter around Izuku specifically. He stopped picking fights. He stopped making snide comments. He just watched. The way a predator watches a bigger predator enter its territory, Todoroki started sitting closer to Izuku in class. Not next to him, one desk away, then two desks, then back to one. He never initiated conversation. He just existed in proximity, like a planet caught in a gravity well it couldn't escape. Uraraka stopped trying to befriend Izuku and started trying to understand him instead. She asked careful questions that she framed as casual. So, do you like cooking? What do you do after school? Do you have any hobbies? Izuku answered them honestly. No, Toga cooks. Go home. Not really. And she filed the answers away with an analytical mind that was sharper than most people gave her credit for, and the teachers changed too. Not visibly, but in small ways. Aizawa, back from the hospital, his arm in a cast, face still bandaged, watched Izuku in class with an intensity that went beyond normal teacher scrutiny. Present Mike called on him less frequently, as if afraid the answer would break the class's confidence. All Might made excuses to stop by Class 1A more often than his schedule required. They were all trying to figure out the same thing. What was he? What he? What could he become? And could he be trusted? Izuku didn't care about their assessments. He had a more immediate concern. The UA Sports Festival was coming. It was the biggest event on the hero school calendar. Broadcast nationally, watched by every pro-hero agency in Japan. A showcase for students to demonstrate their abilities in front of potential employers. For most students, it was the opportunity of a lifetime. For Izuku, it was a scheduling inconvenience. The festival fell on a Saturday, which meant he'd miss his weekly trip to the farmer's market with Toga. You should take it seriously, Toga told him the night before. They were sitting on the couch, her legs draped across his lap, watching a cooking show. It's important for your career. I don't want a career. Well, you need one. The deal with Nezu says you have to be a hero. If you don't get noticed at the sports festival, you'll end up as some underground nobody. That sounds ideal. Izuku. He looked at her. She had her serious face on, lips slightly pursed, eyebrows drawn together, golden eyes steady. It was the face she made when she was about to win an argument by sheer force of caring more than he did. Fine, he said. I'll try. Win. I just said I'd try. Win, and then come home and take me somewhere nice for dinner. Define nice. Somewhere with tablecloths. That narrows it down. She poked his cheek with her toe. He caught her foot and held it. She squirmed. Izuku-kun, let go of my foot. Say please. I will bite you. You've done that before. It didn't hurt. It hurt my feelings that it didn't hurt you. He let go of her foot. She tucked it back under his thigh and went back to watching TV. The cooking show host was making a souffle. It fell in the oven. The audience groaned. I love you, Izuku said. He said it more now. Practice. Each time it got a little easier, a little more natural, like a muscle he was learning to use. Toga smiled without looking away from the TV. I know. The UA Sports Festival began with a bang. Literally. Midnight, the 18-plus hero, dressed in her usual outfit that made half the audience blush and the other half question UA's dress code policy, cracked her whip and announced the first event, an obstacle race around the stadium grounds, open to all first-year classes. Hundreds of students surged toward the starting line. The atmosphere was electric, cameras everywhere, pro heroes in the stands. The crowd roaring, Izuku stood at the starting line with his hands in his pockets. Begin! Midnight shouted. The tunnel leading out of the stadium immediately became a choke point. Students crashed into each other, quirks activating, elbows flying. Todoroki acted first. A wave of ice shot from his right foot and froze the ground, the walls, and a dozen students in place. He rode the ice forward, clearing the tunnel in seconds. Bakugo blasted over the crowd with his explosions, propelling himself above the chaos. Izuku walked. He walked through the tunnel at a normal pace. Students bounced off him. They ran to his back, his shoulders, his arms. None of them moved him. He was like a boulder in a river. The current flowed around him but couldn't shift him. One student tried to push past and accidentally touched his Tau field. He went pale, staggered sideways, and vomited. Izuku emerged from the tunnel into open air. The obstacle course stretched ahead, a robot zone, a canyon crossing, and a minefield. Todoroki was already past the robots. Bakugo was close behind. Izuku checked his watch. Toga wanted him to win. Winning meant finishing first. Finishing first meant finishing fast. He stopped walking and started moving. To the cameras, to the audience, to the millions watching at home, what happened next looked like a special effect. One moment Izuku was at the tunnel exit. The next moment, literally the next frame of broadcast footage, he was at the finish line. He hadn't run. He hadn't flown. He had simply moved, using Ninpo, using Tau, covering the entire obstacle course in a single displacement that defied rational explanation. The robot zone, the canyon, the minefield. He passed through all of them in the space between one heartbeat and the next. He crossed the finish line. He stopped. He put his hands back in his pockets. The stadium was silent. Then it erupted. What just happened? Present Mike screamed from the announcer's booth, his voice quirk causing the speakers to rattle. Izuku Midoriya of Class 1A Did anyone else see that? He covered the entire course in hold on. He checked with the timing officials. 0.4 seconds. That's a new record by a lot. That's a lot. In the stands, pro heroes lowered their binoculars and looked at each other. Who is that kid? A hero in the crowd murmured. That's the Hollow, another answered, his voice tight. Commission trained, former black operative. He's a student. He's a monster. Both statements were true. The second event was a cavalry battle. Teams of 4 riding on each other's shoulders trying to steal headbands worth points from other teams. The person who placed first in the race had a headband worth 10 million points. Every other student in the festival looked at Izuku and immediately decided, not a chance. No one wanted to be on his team. Not because they disliked him, though several did, but because being near him felt dangerous. Not physically, but existentially, like standing next to a bonfire. You might not get burned, but you'd never be comfortable. Izuku stood in the center of the field with a 10 million point headband on his forehead and no teammates. You need a team, Midnight announced. I'll be fine alone, Izuku said. The rules require a team of at least 2. He looked around the field. Every student was already formed up. Every team was eyeing his headband like wolves eyeing a wounded deer. A hand went up. I'll be on his team. Uraraka? She walked toward him through the crowd of teams, chin up, face determined. Behind her, Ida followed. He'd been trying to approach Izuku for weeks, looking for a way to prove himself after the USJ. I'll join as well, Ida said. Your actions at the USJ were exemplary, and I believe in repaying one's debts. A third person materialized from the crowd. A girl with pink dreadlocks and crosshair eyes, Mei Hatsume, from the support course. She wasn't looking at Izuku. She was looking at his body like it was a machine she wanted to take apart and study. I have gear I want to test, Hatsume announced. And you seem like the kind of person who won't break my prototypes. And so, almost accidentally, Izuku had a team. The cavalry battle began. Every team charged straight at Izuku's group. They shouldn't have. Izuku served as the rider, Uraraka and Ida as the base, Hatsume as support. The arrangement meant Izuku was the elevated target. Every team would come at him first. He wanted that. The first team to reach them was led by a boy from Class 1B with a quirk that let him enlarge his fists. He came in swinging. Izuku leaned sideways, just slightly, barely a shift in his center of gravity, and the massive fist sailed past his head. He reached out, plucked the headband from the boy's forehead, and flicked him in the sternum. Not hard, just enough. The boy and his entire team flew backward 15 meters and landed in a heap. 1, Izuku said. 3 more teams attacked simultaneously. Izuku dealt with them in the same fashion. A dodge, a counter, a flick, a tap, a brush of his fingertips. Nothing that looked like fighting. It looked like a bored parent fending off toddlers. 2 minutes left! Present Mick shouted. Bakugo attacked. He came from above, propelling himself with explosions, both palms blazing, eyes wild. He was fast, aggressive, and genuinely skilled. Izuku gave him that. His combat instincts were sharp. His quirk application was creative. In another world, against anyone else, Bakugo Katsuki would have been the most dangerous person on this field. But Izuku was here. Bakugo's right hand detonated 3 feet from Izuku's face. The explosion was massive, a concussive blast that scorched the air and sent a shockwave rolling across the field. Students stumbled. Cameras shook. Izuku tilted his head an inch to the left. The explosion passed his cheek close enough to ruffle his hair. He reached through the smoke with one hand, caught Bakugo's wrist, and pulled him forward off balance. With his other hand, he gently removed the headband from around Bakugo's neck. "Nice quirk," Izuku said. "You could hurt someone with that." Bakugo's face cycled through 5 different expressions in 2 seconds. Rage, disbelief, humiliation, grudging respect, and then back to rage. "Let go of me, you!" Izuku let go. Bakugo tumbled back to his team, headbandless, sputtering curses. The buzzer sounded. Izuku's team finished first with more headbands than they could wear. The cavalry battle was over. "You didn't even try," Uraraka said, half amazed and half offended, as they dismounted. "I tried," Izuku said. "I'm trying to win. My wife said I had to." "Your wife?" Uraraka, Ida, and Hatsume said in unison. Izuku pulled out his phone and showed them his lock screen. A photo of Toga, beaming, holding a cat she'd found in an alley and brought home despite Izuku's protests. "She's so cute," Uraraka said. "She looks very kind," Ida said. "Does she have any engineering experience?" Hatsume asked. "She works at a convenience store," Izuku said. He looked at the photo for a moment. His expression didn't change, it never changed, but something in his eyes went soft, warm, like sunlight breaking through clouds. Then he put the phone away and the clouds returned. "The next round is one-on-one fights. Let's get this over with." The tournament bracket was posted, 16 students, single elimination. Izuku's first opponent was a boy from Class 1B named Ibara Shiozaki, whose quirk let her control her vine-like hair. The fight lasted 4 seconds. She launched her vines. Izuku walked through them. They withered and died on contact with his Tau field, reached her, and tapped her on the forehead with one finger. She flew out of the ring and landed on the grass 20 meters away, unconscious before she hit the ground. Winner, Midoriya. The crowd was quiet. Not shocked. They were past shock with him, just resigned. Like watching a force of nature and knowing there was nothing to do but get out of the way. His second opponent was Tokoyami, the boy with the shadow quirk, Dark Shadow, a strong quirk, dangerous in the right conditions. Dark Shadow surged toward Izuku like a living tidal wave of darkness. Izuku flared his Tau. Light, pure, white, blazing light radiated from his body. Dark Shadow screamed, shrank, and retreated inside Tokoyami's body. Tokoyami himself fell to his knees, overwhelmed by the sheer volume of energy Izuku was radiating. "Sorry," Izuku said, and he almost sounded like he meant it. He stepped forward and pushed Tokoyami out of the ring with an open palm. Winner, Midoriya. His semi-final opponent was Todoroki. This was the fight the audience had been waiting for. Todoroki Shoto, the son of Endeavor, the number 2 hero. Half cold, half hot. Immensely powerful, ridiculously talented, carrying the weight of his father's ambitions and his mother's pain on his shoulders like a cross. He only used his ice, never his fire. Everyone knew why. The fire came from his father, and Todoroki hated his father with a quiet, controlled fury that never quite showed on his face. They stood across from each other in the ring. Midnight raised her hand. The crowd held its breath. Begin. Todoroki struck first. A glacier, an actual glacier, erupted from the ground and surged toward Izuku. Tons of ice, moving at incredible speed, a wall of frozen destruction that would have crushed, buried, and frozen anyone else in the tournament. Izuku raised his hand. Ninpo, ascetic blaze. A wave of heat pulsed from his palm. Not fire, just heat. Pure thermal energy. The glacier hit it and evaporated, instantaneously. One moment, a mountain of ice. The next, a cloud of steam that billowed across the stadium and dissipated in the wind. Todoroki's eyes widened. He sent another wave of ice. Bigger, faster, more of it. Izuku evaporated that too. And the next one, and the next. He stood in the center of the ring, one hand raised, and melted everything Todoroki threw at him without moving from his spot. "You're only using half your power," Izuku said. Todoroki's jaw tightened. "I don't need his power to beat you. You need it." Izuku lowered his hand. "Not because I'm strong, because you're incomplete without it. I can see it in you. Your Tau is divided. Half of your energy flows freely. The other half is locked behind a wall you built yourself. You don't know anything about me. Yes, I know what it looks like when someone is at war with themselves. I spent most of my life that way." Izuku paused. He thought about Toga, about the night she'd pressed his bloodied hand to her cheek, about the words that had cracked him open. "You're not a monster to me. Someone told me once that I wasn't defined by where my power came from, that I was more than what someone else made me. She was right." Todoroki stared at him. His left side trembled. The temperature around him fluctuated. Cold, then warm, then cold again. A war fought in real time on his face, in his body. "Use your fire," Izuku said. "Not for him, for you." Todoroki closed his eyes. When he opened them, his left side was burning. Flames erupted along his arm, his shoulder, half his face, orange and yellow and white, blazing with a fury that matched the ice on his right. For the first time in the tournament, for the first time in years, Todoroki Shoto was fighting at full power. The crowd roared. In the stands, Endeavor stood up, his flaming beard blazing brighter than ever. "Shoto!" he bellowed. "You finally." Todoroki launched everything he had. Ice from the right, fire from the left. A dual-element assault that combined into a storm of elemental destruction, freezing and burning simultaneously, turning the air itself into a weapon. Izuku watched it come. He felt the heat and the cold, equal and opposite, spiraling toward him like two dragons locked in combat. He met it head-on. He stepped forward into the storm. Ice formed on his right side and shattered. Fire washed over his left side and dissipated. He walked through Todoroki's ultimate attack the way he walked through everything. Unbothered, unharmed, unstoppable. He reached Todoroki. The boy was panting, exhausted, burning on one side and frosting on the other. His eyes were bright, alive, more alive than Izuku had ever seen them. "Good," Izuku said. He placed his palm on Todoroki's chest and pushed, gently, carefully, just enough force to send him sliding backward out of the ring. "Winner. Midoriya." Todoroki sat on the grass outside the ring and looked up at the sky. Tears were streaming down his face, not from pain, not from loss. "Thank you," he said quietly. Izuku nodded. He walked away. The final match was Izuku versus Bakugo. The crowd was electric. The broadcast ratings were the highest in sports festival history. Every pro hero in the stadium was on the edge of their seat. Bakugo stood in the ring with explosions crackling from both palms. His face was set. His eyes burned. He knew he couldn't win. Everyone in the stadium knew he couldn't win. Bakugo himself knew. He was going to fight anyway. Izuku respected that. "Begin." Bakugo attacked with everything. He'd been watching Izuku's fights. He'd studied his patterns. He came in with his strongest opening, a massive explosion from both palms at point-blank range, followed by a spinning kick, followed by a consecutive blast chain that turned the air into a wall of fire and concussive force. It was the best fighting Bakugo had ever done. Fast, creative, relentless. He used his explosions for mobility, for offense, for defense. He fought like a man possessed. Izuku dodged. He didn't counter. He didn't attack. He just dodged, weaving between explosions, stepping around blasts, tilting his body to let attacks slide past him by millimeters. He was giving Bakugo a chance to land a hit. To show what he could do, Bakugo realized what was happening. His face twisted. "Don't you dare go easy on me!" Izuku looked at him. Something shifted in his expression. Not quite respect, he didn't respect many people, but recognition. One fighter seeing another. "Fine," Izuku said. He moved. To Bakugo, the world blurred. One instant, Izuku was 5 meters away. The next, he was inside Bakugo's guard. His hand was on Bakugo's stomach. His face was inches from Bakugo's face. "You're talented," Izuku said. "You work harder than anyone in this school. Don't let anger be the only thing that drives you." Then he pulsed his Tao. It wasn't an attack. There was no fire, no force, no impact. Just a wave of pure energy that passed through Bakugo's body and overloaded his nervous system like a power surge through a circuit breaker. Bakugo's eyes rolled back. His body went limp. Izuku caught him before he hit the ground and lowered him gently to the ring floor. "Winner and champion, Izuku Midoriya." The crowd erupted. Confetti fell. Present Meek's voice shook the stadium. In the stands, Toga was on her feet. Izuku had gotten her a ticket, screaming and cheering and waving a hand-painted sign that read, "Go, go, Hollow-kun," with little hearts around it. Izuku looked up at her through the noise and the confetti and the chaos. Their eyes met across the stadium. She blew him a kiss. He caught it. Not literally. He raised his hand and closed his fist like catching a ball and pressed it to his chest. It was a small, silly gesture that looked absurd coming from the boy who just dominated an entire tournament without taking a single hit. In the stands, Uraraka turned to Ida and whispered, "He's actually kind of adorable." Ida, who was crying manly tears of sportsmanship, nodded vigorously. The medal ceremony was brief. All Might, in his muscled form, grinning wide, placed the gold medal around Izuku's neck. The crowd cheered. Congratulations, young Midoriya. All Might boomed. You've shown the world what you're capable of. How does it feel? Izuku looked at the medal, looked at the crowd, looked at Toga in the stands. It feels like dinner time, he said. The weeks after the sports festival passed quickly. Izuku's performance had generated offers from every hero agency in Japan. He ignored all of them. Nezu assigned him to an internship with Gran Torino, a retired hero who taught All Might and who, according to Nezu, was one of the few people alive who might be able to keep up with you. Gran Torino couldn't keep up with him, not even close. But the old man was sharp, experienced, and completely unimpressed by Izuku's power, which made him tolerable company. You hit too hard, Gran Torino told him on the first day after watching Izuku punch through a concrete training wall like it was cardboard. You can hit too hard? You can when you're supposed to be a hero. Heroes save people. Hard to save someone when you've turned the building they're in to rubble. Izuku considered this. It was a perspective he'd never been trained to have. In the commission, maximum force was standard protocol. You hit as hard as you could because dead targets didn't fight back. But Toga's voice echoed in his head. You should smile more. People like it when you smile. She didn't want him to be a weapon anymore. She wanted him to be something better. And he'd promised to try. Show me, Izuku said. Gran Torino raised an eyebrow. Show you what? How to hold back. How to fight without destroying everything around me. The old man studied him for a long moment. Then he grinned, a sharp, knowing grin that made him look 50 years younger. Kid, he said, that might be the smartest thing you've ever said. They trained. Gran Torino taught him restraint. Not weakness, not hesitation, but control. How to direct force precisely. How to subdue without maiming. How to protect while fighting. It was harder than anything Izuku had done in his life, including dying. The concept was foreign to everything his commission training had built into him. Every reflex he had was calibrated for lethality. To deprogram that, to overlay a new paradigm of controlled force, was like teaching his muscles a new language. But he learned. Slowly. Imperfectly. Because Toga had asked him to be better, and that was reason enough. The internship was scheduled for 1 week. On the third night, everything went sideways. Izuku was in Hosu City. Gran Torino had brought him there for urban patrol training. They were on a bullet train heading into the city center when Izuku's Tao flared. Again, that prickling sensation, that animal awareness. Something wrong. He looked out the train window. The city was burning. Literal fires, explosions, columns of smoke rising from multiple locations across the skyline, and moving between the buildings, dark shapes, creatures, the same brain-exposed muscle-warp design as the Nomu from the USJ. Nomu, Izuku said. Gran Torino was already on his feet. Multiple. I count at least 3. It's a distraction. Gran Torino looked at him. How do you know? Because if I wanted to attack someone important, I'd create chaos first. Draw out the heroes, spread them thin. Izuku's eyes were scanning the city, reading the patterns of destruction like a book. The Nomu are deployed in a line from east to west. They're herding the hero response toward the city center, which means whatever the real target is, it's somewhere else. His phone buzzed. A text from Ida. 2 words, help me. Then a GPS pin. An alley in the Eiko district. South of the main fighting. Exactly where the hero response was being drawn away from, Izuku stood up. Where are you going? Gran Torino demanded. Ida's in trouble. The police and pro-heroes aren't going to get there in time. I will. He punched through the train window and jumped. Gran Torino stared at the shattered window. Wind howled through the gap. He sighed. Kids these days. Izuku moved across the Hosu city skyline like a shadow. Rooftop to rooftop, gap to gap, his body flowing through the urban landscape with the fluid precision of someone who'd been running across rooftops since childhood. Because he had. Different rooftops, different centuries, same muscle memory. His Tao guided him. He could feel the life energy of every living thing in the city, a vast, complex web of light and motion. He filtered through it, searching for Ida's signature. Found it. Fading. Injured. And next to it, another signature. Sharp. Focused. Dangerous. A predator in its element. Izuku dropped from the roof. The alley was narrow. Dark. Lit only by the distant glow of the fires burning across Hosu. It smelled like garbage and blood. Not fresh blood, old blood, dried into the concrete, layered over years. Ida was on the ground. He was hurt, a deep cut across his shoulder, another on his arm. His engines were damaged. He couldn't stand. Over him, crouched like a spider, was a man. Stain, the hero killer. Izuku recognized him from the commission files he'd memorized years ago. Chizome Akaguro, former vigilante. Quirk, blood curdle. He could paralyze anyone whose blood he tasted. Armed with an arsenal of blades. Skilled. Experienced. The most wanted man in Japan, with 17 pro heroes dead and 23 permanently maimed. He was lean, wrapped in dark bandages, a tattered scarf around his neck. His face was gaunt, nose cut off, teeth filed to points, eyes red and burning with conviction. He held a katana in one hand, the blade stained with Ida's blood. Another one, Stain said, his eyes locking onto Izuku. Come to play hero? Izuku looked at Ida. The boy was breathing, conscious. Paralyzed by Stain's quirk, unable to move, tears of frustration and pain cutting tracks through the dirt on his face. Midoriya, Ida croaked. Run. He's 2. Quiet, Izuku said, not harshly, just firmly. He stepped into the alley and stopped 10 meters from Stain. I'm not here to play anything. Stain studied him, his red eyes narrowed. He tilted his head and something shifted in his expression. Recognition, not of Izuku's face, of what he was. You're different, Stain said slowly. You don't feel like a hero. You don't feel like a villain. His lips pulled back from his pointed teeth. You feel like a killer. I was, Izuku said. I'm retired. Retired. Stain laughed. It was an ugly sound, raw and broken. There's no such thing. Once you cross that line, you carry it forever. The blood on your hands doesn't wash off just because you put on a school uniform. I know. Stain's laughter died. He looked at Izuku more carefully. You actually know, don't you? How many? 213. The alley went silent. Even the distant sounds of the Nomu attacks seemed to dim. Stain's grip on his katana shifted. His stance changed. Not aggressive, contemplative. He was reassessing. 213. Stain repeated. And they let you into a hero school? The alternative was execution. It didn't take. Something flickered across Stain's face. Interest. The same kind of interest a wolf shows when it meets another wolf. I kill fake heroes, Stain said. Frauds who wear the title for money, fame, power. Parasites who corrupt the symbol of what heroism should be. I kill them because someone has to, because the system is broken and no one else has the courage to fix it. Izuku listened. All Might is the only real hero, Stain continued. The only one who embodies true heroism, self-sacrifice, conviction. Saving people not for reward, but because it's right. Everyone else is a fraud. I'm not a hero, Izuku said. Then what are you? Izuku was quiet for a moment. He looked at Ida on the ground, at the blood on the concrete, at the blade in Stain's hand. I'm an assassin on a leash, he said. I made a deal with someone powerful so I could go home to someone I love. That's it. I don't care about heroism. I don't care about your crusade. I don't care about All Might, or fake heroes, or the system. He took a step forward. But you hurt someone in front of me, and my wife told me to be nice. So I won't kill you, but I am going to stop you. Stain's eyes flashed. The contemplation evaporated, replaced by the cold, sharp focus of a man who'd killed 17 times and survived every hero Japan had thrown at him. You think you can? Stain said. I think I can do whatever I want, Izuku replied. The question is, how much of you will be left when I'm done? Stain attacked. He was fast, genuinely fast, faster than most pro heroes, faster than anyone in Class 1A, faster than every villain at the USJ. His body moved with the efficiency of someone who'd trained for decades to turn himself into a weapon. The katana came in at a diagonal angle aimed at Izuku's throat, a killing stroke delivered with perfect form. Izuku didn't dodge, he didn't block, he didn't move. The katana hit his neck. The blade shattered. The impact produced a sound like a tuning fork being struck against stone, a clear, ringing clang that echoed down the alley. Stain's hands went numb from the vibration. Fragments of the blade scattered across the concrete like broken glass. Stain stared at the broken handle in his hand. He'd put everything into that strike. Speed, precision, force. The blade was tempered steel, designed to cut through reinforced hero costumes. It had broken against Izuku's skin like a toy. Izuku hadn't flinched. My turn, he said. He moved forward. One step. Just one. But when his foot came down, the concrete cracked beneath it, and Stain, the hero killer, the man who'd terrorized Japan's hero community for years, took an involuntary step back. Stain dropped the broken katana and drew two short knives from his belt. He threw both simultaneously, one at Izuku's left eye, one at his right. Perfect aim, perfect velocity. Izuku caught them. Both. Between his fingers, without looking, he snapped the blades and let the pieces fall. Stain drew more weapons. He had dozens on his body, knives, daggers, throwing needles, a second sword strapped to his back. He was a walking arsenal. He used them all. Izuku broke them all. Stain threw a volley of needles. Izuku's Tau field deflected them. Stain closed the distance and slashed with his backup sword. The blade crumpled against Izuku's forearm. Stain tried to cut his wrist, to draw blood, to activate his quirk, and the knife edge bent against Izuku's skin without breaking it. Stain couldn't make him bleed. And without blood, his quirk was useless. The hero killer realized this. Something shifted in his expression, not fear. Stain was too committed to his cause to feel fear, but recognition of an impossible situation. He'd built his entire fighting style around his quirk. Cut, taste blood, paralyze, kill. It was elegant, efficient, and completely useless against someone whose skin couldn't be cut. What are you? Stain breathed. People keep asking me that, Izuku said. I'm just a person. No person is that durable. You'd be surprised. Stain lunged. A final, desperate attack, his last sword held in a reverse grip, aimed at Izuku's eye. The one soft target, the one vulnerability. Izuku caught the blade. With his bare hand, his fingers wrapped around the steel. Blood didn't flow, the edge didn't penetrate. He held it the way someone holds a pencil. Enough, Izuku said. He punched Stain. Ninpo, rock pillar. It wasn't fire, it was force. Pure, concentrated kinetic energy, channeled through his Tau and delivered through his fist into Stain's torso. The technique was ancient. He'd learned it in a life he barely remembered, on an island that no longer existed, from a man who could split mountains with his palms. The impact was catastrophic. Stain's body bent around Izuku's fist. His ribs shattered, not cracked, not fractured, shattered. Multiple bones breaking simultaneously in a chain reaction of structural failure. His feet left the ground. He flew backward, 10 meters, 20-30, and hit the brick wall at the end of the alley with enough force to punch through it. The wall exploded outward. Brick and mortar sprayed across the empty street beyond. Stain rolled through the debris and came to a stop face down on the asphalt. He didn't move. Then, impossibly he did. Stain pushed himself up, slowly, agonizingly. His arms shook. Blood poured from his mouth. His torso was visibly deformed, ribs out of place, something internal ruptured. He was broken in a dozen places and his body was screaming at him to stay down. He stood up anyway. He turned to face Izuku. His red eyes burned with a fanaticism that went beyond pain, beyond injury, beyond the physical limitations of his damaged body. A real hero. Stain gasped, swaying on his feet. Doesn't stop just because it hurts. Izuku walked through the hole in the wall. He stood in the street. Stain swayed before him, a broken man, held upright by sheer conviction. Izuku felt something. Not pity, not admiration. Something in between. This man was wrong. His methods, his targets, his ideology. All wrong. But his commitment was real. The willingness to break himself for what he believed in. That was something Izuku understood. It's over, Izuku said. It's never over. As long as fake heroes, Izuku was in front of him. One step, one movement, his hand on Stain's shoulder. It's over, he repeated, quieter. Not a threat, a statement, a fact, like gravity. Like sunrise, Stain looked into his eyes, and for the first time the fire dimmed. Not extinguished, but banked, controlled. He'd met something he couldn't overcome with willpower alone, and some primal part of him recognized it. His legs buckled. Izuku caught him before he hit the ground and lowered him gently to the asphalt. You're not a hero, Stain muttered, his consciousness fading. No. You're not a villain either. No. Then what? I told you, I'm an assassin on a leash who wants to go home to his wife. Stain's mouth twitched. It might have been a grimace of pain. It might have been a smile. She must be something special. Izuku looked down at the broken man. He thought of Toga, her smile, her laugh, the way she kissed his palm on the night that changed his life. Yeah, Izuku said, she is. Stain passed out. Izuku stood up. He walked back through the hole in the wall to the alley where Ida was still lying on the ground, paralyzed but conscious. He knelt beside the boy. Can you move? And no. His quirk, it'll wear off. Just wait. Izuku sat down next to him, cross-legged, calm, like they were in a park instead of a blood-stained alley. Midoriya, Ida said. His voice was choked with emotion. I came here to kill him. Stain. He attacked my brother. Tensei can't walk anymore because of him. I came here for revenge, not to save people, not to be a hero, for revenge. Izuku listened. You saved me, I was going to die, and you saved me, and I don't deserve. Stop, Izuku said. Not harshly. You made a mistake, you'll make more. That's what people do. The question isn't whether you fall, it's whether you get back up. Ida looked at him. Tears ran down his face. Where did you learn that? Izuku thought about it. A protein bar, he said. What? Long story. Sirens wailed in the distance. The pro-heroes were coming. The Nomu were being dealt with. The crisis was winding down. Izuku reached into his jacket and pulled out a locket, small, silver, worn smooth from being handled. He opened it. Inside was a picture of Toga, the same photo on his phone's lock screen, but printed small and trimmed to fit. Her smile looked up at him from the palm of his hand. He smiled back. It was a genuine, soft, warm smile that transformed his face entirely. The flat, dead eyes came alive. The hard lines softened. For one moment, in a blood-stained alley in Hosu City, the most dangerous teenager in Japan looked exactly like what he was, a young man in love. Job done, he said quietly to the photo. I'm coming home, Himiko. The aftermath was a bureaucratic nightmare. Stain was arrested. His injuries were severe but not life-threatening. Izuku had held back more than anyone realized. The hero killer was transferred to Tartarus, the maximum security prison for the most dangerous villains in Japan. His capture was headline news for weeks. But the story the public latched onto wasn't the capture itself. It was who had done it. The footage surfaced within days. Bystander recordings, security cameras, a shaky cell phone video from a resident whose apartment overlooked the alley. They showed everything. Stain's blades shattering against Izuku's skin. The rock pillar strike that sent the hero killer through a wall. The impossible, effortless dominance of a boy who fought like he'd been doing it for centuries. The internet, already primed by the sports festival footage, went supernova. The Hollow vs. the hero killer trended worldwide. Fan edits set the fight to music. Analysis videos broke down every second of the encounter. Manga artists drew fan comics. Someone made a gif of the moment Izuku caught 2 thrown knives between his fingers that accumulated 400 million views in a week. None of it mattered to Izuku. What mattered was this. It was 7:43 p.m. He was on the last train back to Musutafu. The city was dark outside the windows, lights streaking past like falling stars. He was tired, not physically, never physically, but in the way that mattered. The tired that lived in his soul. His phone buzzed. A text from Toga. Curry's ready. Extra spicy. Hurry home. Followed by 17 heart emojis and a sticker of a cat wearing a chef's hat. Izuku typed back, 10 minutes. She responded instantly, make it 5. He put his phone away, leaned his head against the window, closed his eyes. Behind his eyelids, 2 lives blurred together. The island, the executions, the monsters and the gods. The woman who'd made a hollow man feel human the first time in a life that ended centuries ago. And now this life, this body, this world. Different faces, different names, same emptiness, slowly, painfully being filled by someone who looked at the worst of him and said, I love you, you know? The train pulled into Musutafu station. Izuku stepped onto the platform. The night air was cool. Cherry blossoms were blooming early. Pink petals drifted across the station like gentle snowfall. He walked home. The house was warm. Light spilled from the kitchen window into the garden. He could smell curry from the front gate, rich, spicy, with that particular sharpness that meant Toga had used the expensive curry roux instead of the instant stuff. He opened the door. I'm home. Toga appeared from the kitchen at approximately the speed of sound. She was wearing an apron over one of his old shirts. The shirt hung past her knees, the sleeves rolled up 5 times, and the apron had a picture of a cartoon bear holding a spatula. There was curry sauce on her cheek. She crashed into him, arms around his neck, legs off the ground. He caught her. He always caught her, and held on. You're late, she said into his neck. Sorry, there was a villain. I saw. It's all over the news. She pulled back to look at his face. Her golden eyes scanned him, not for injuries, she knew better than that, but for the other kind of damage, the kind that didn't show on his skin. Are you okay? She asked. She always asked. Not about his body, about him. I'm okay, he said. Promise? Promise. She kissed him, soft, warm, tasting faintly of curry because she'd been taste testing while she cooked. He kissed her back. His hands were gentle on her waist. Hands that had shattered a man's ribs 30 minutes ago now held this girl like she was the most precious thing in the world. Because she was. "Dinner's getting cold," Toga murmured against his lips. "Let it." She laughed, that big, bright, unapologetic laugh that filled every corner of their small house. "Izuku Midoriya, are you being romantic? I'm trying. It's working." She kissed him again. "Okay, one more minute, then curry." They stood in the entryway for longer than a minute. The curry got cold. Neither of them cared. Eventually, they ate. They sat at the kitchen table, a proper table, not the cardboard box they'd used in the old apartment, and Toga talked about her day. A regular customer at the convenience store who always bought the same energy drink, a stray cat she'd seen on the way home, a recipe she wanted to try for tomorrow's dinner. Izuku listened. He always listened. Her voice was the only sound in the world that made the noise in his head go quiet. "Oh," Toga said, bouncing in her chair. "I almost forgot. I have something for you." She disappeared into the bedroom and came back holding a small box wrapped in red paper with a gold ribbon. She placed it on the table in front of him. "What is this?" "Open it." He opened it. Inside was a ring. Not a capsule machine ring, a real one. Simple silver band. No gems, no engravings, just clean, smooth metal. There was a second ring underneath it, slightly smaller, same design. "Toga." "We have real identities now," she said. Her voice was casual, but her hands were shaking slightly. "Real names, real records. No more hiding, no more running." She looked at him. "So I thought maybe we could make it official? For real this time?" Izuku stared at the rings. He stared at them for so long that Toga's smile started to waver. "I mean, you don't have to," she said quickly. "It's stupid. I just thought, since we already call each other and the capsule machine rings are kind of falling apart, and I saw these at a shop and..." He put the ring on his finger. It fit perfectly. He picked up the smaller ring and reached across the table. Toga held out her hand, shaking now, definitely shaking, and he slid it onto her finger. It fit perfectly too. "Yes," he said. His voice was rough, thick with something he still didn't have a name for, this feeling that was too big for his chest, too warm for his body, too real for someone who'd spent most of his life feeling nothing. "Yes," Toga whispered. "Yes, official, for real. Yes." Her eyes filled with tears, the happy kind, the overflowing kind. She came around the table and climbed into his lap. She did this a lot, he'd stopped questioning it, and wrapped herself around him. "I love you," she said. "I love you. I love you. I love you." He held her. He pressed his face into her hair. He breathed her in, her shampoo, her skin, the faint smell of curry that clung to her clothes. "I love you too, Himiko. More than I knew a person could love anything." They stayed like that. In their kitchen. In their house. In their life. This small, ordinary, impossible life that a hollow man and a girl the world called a monster had built together out of nothing but stubbornness and love. Outside, the cherry blossoms fell, the city hummed, the world turned, and Izuku Midoriya, the hollow, the weapon, the assassin, the boy who'd lived twice and died once and killed more people than he could remember, was finally, irrevocably, completely home. The silver ring was warm on his finger. The curry was cold on the table. Toga's heartbeat was steady against his chest. Everything else, the League of Villains, the Commission, the hero world, the fights yet to come, all of that was tomorrow's problem. Tonight, he was just a man who loved his wife, and that was enough. In the garden outside, a single cherry blossom landed on the windowsill. The lamplight caught it, pink against the glass, fragile and perfect and temporary like all beautiful things. But some beautiful things last longer than they should. Some flowers bloom in places where nothing should grow. Some hollow things, given time and care and love, fill up. Izuku felt Toga's breathing slow against his chest. She was falling asleep. She always fell asleep on him after dinner, full stomach, warm body, safe place. He shifted carefully, cradling her, and carried her to the bedroom. He laid her on the bed and pulled the blanket over her. She murmured something in her sleep. He leaned close. "Love you, Hollow-kun." He brushed the hair from her face, his scarred hand against her soft cheek. The contrast was stark, rough against smooth, violence against tenderness, what he'd been against what he was becoming. "Sleep well, Himiko." He went back to the kitchen, cleaned up dinner, washed the dishes, Put the leftovers away. Normal things, domestic things. Things that a weapon wasn't supposed to know how to do, but had learned anyway, because the woman sleeping in the next room had taught him. He sat at the clean table and looked at the ring on his finger. He turned it slowly, watched the lamplight play across the silver surface. In another life, on another island, there had been another ring, another wife, another reason to fight, to survive, to crawl through hell and come out the other side. He'd lost that life, lost that ring, lost that person. But here, now, in this body, in this world, he'd found it again. The same thing wearing different clothes. Love. Purpose. Home. He wouldn't lose it this time. He pulled out his phone and looked at the calendar. Tomorrow was a school day. There would be classes, training, the usual routine, and beyond that, the League of Villains was still out there. Shigaraki was still planning. The mastermind behind the USJ attack and the Nomu and the Hosu incident was still in the shadows. The fight wasn't over. But it wasn't tonight's fight. Tonight, the dishes were done, and his wife was sleeping, and the cherry blossoms were falling, and the world was quiet and still. Izuku turned off the kitchen light. He walked to the bedroom. He lay down next to Toga. She rolled toward him in her sleep, her arm falling across his chest, her face pressing against his shoulder. He closed his eyes. For the first time in 2 lifetimes, the hollow man felt full. And somewhere, in the space between sleep and waking, between one life and the next, between the island of monsters and the city of heroes, a voice that sounded like his own but older, rougher, scarred by centuries of silence, whispered, "You found her again. Don't let go." Izuku Midoriya didn't let go. He held on. The morning after was quiet. Izuku woke at 5:47 a.m., 13 minutes before his alarm, to find Toga's arm draped across his chest and her face pressed into his neck. The silver ring on her finger caught the early light through the curtains. He didn't move. He lay there and counted the seconds, not because he had nothing else to do, because he wanted to remember how many seconds this moment lasted. 312. Then his alarm went off and he had to go to school. The weeks following the Hosu incident changed things. Not for Izuku, nothing changed for Izuku except the date on the calendar, but for everyone around him. The hero world had taken notice, not the polite academic notice they'd paid after the sports festival. This was different. This was the kind of notice that came with closed-door meetings, classified briefings, and phone calls made on encrypted lines. The hero killer Stain, the most wanted criminal in Japan, the man who'd crippled or killed 17 pro-heroes, had been taken down by a first-year student, a teenager. And not just taken down, dismantled. The footage showed blades shattering against Izuku's skin like glass against concrete. It showed the rock pillar strike that launched Stain through a brick wall. It showed a boy who fought with the precision of a surgeon and the power of a natural disaster. Pro-heroes didn't know whether to be relieved or terrified. Most settled on both. Endeavor, the number 2 hero, requested a meeting with Nezu to discuss the Midoriya situation. Nezu politely declined. Hawks, the number 3 hero, sent a recruitment letter to Izuku through official channels. Izuku threw it away without reading it. Best Genist sent one too. Same result. At school, the atmosphere shifted. The other students in Class 1A had always been wary of Izuku. After Hosu, wary became something closer to reverent. They didn't crowd him anymore. They gave him space in the hallways. They lowered their voices when he walked past all except the usual suspects. Uraraka still waved at him every morning. Ida, whose brother Izuku had avenged, whose life Izuku had saved, now treated him with a fierce, almost desperate loyalty that Izuku didn't know what to do with. And Todoroki had started sitting in the desk directly beside him in class, saying nothing, radiating a quiet gratitude that was louder than words. Bakugo didn't talk to him at all anymore. Not out of respect, out of something colder. He was planning. Calculating, watching Izuku the way a climber watches a mountain, figuring out how to summit it. Izuku noticed all of this. He didn't care about any of it. He went to class, he went home, he ate Toga's cooking, he wore his silver ring. He slept next to the only person in the world who made the hollow space behind his ribs feel full. Until final exams arrived and everything got loud again. The practical portion of UA's final exams pitted students against teachers. Teams of 2 against 1 pro-hero, with the goal of either capturing the teacher or escaping the test zone. The matchups were announced in class, and the room went silent when Aizawa read the last one. Midoriya and Bakugo versus All Might. Bakugo's head snapped up, his red eyes burned. Izuku checked his watch. The exam takes place in ground Gamma, Aizawa continued. Special rules for this matchup. All Might has been authorized to use his full power. No restraints. No handicaps. He paused. Given the circumstances, Recovery Girl will be on standby. Full power? Kirishima whispered to Kaminari. Against students? Against Midoriya, Kaminari corrected. They weren't wrong. Ground Gamma was an industrial zone, a labyrinth of pipes, factories, and metal structures designed for complex combat scenarios. Izuku and Bakugo stood at the entrance gate. They hadn't spoken to each other. They didn't need to. I don't need your help, Bakugo said, his voice low and controlled, different from his usual explosiveness. Focused. I know, Izuku said. I'm gonna hit him first. You won't touch him. Bakugo's jaw clenched. Watch me. The horn sounded. All Might was waiting in the center of the zone. Not his skeletal form, his full, muscled, 220-centimeter form, golden hair swept back, smile fixed in place. But the smile was different than the one he showed cameras. Harder. The smile of a man who'd been told to stop holding back against a teenager who'd destroyed a bioweapon designed to kill him. Bakugo launched first. He rocketed forward on twin explosions, covering 50 meters in 2 seconds. He came in high, both palms blazing, and unleashed his strongest attack. AP shot, a focused blast that concentrated his explosive power into a narrow beam. All Might didn't dodge. He raised one hand and caught the blast. The explosion detonated against his palm. Smoke billowed. When it cleared, All Might hadn't moved. His hand wasn't even red. Good power, young Bakugo, All Might boomed. But you'll need more then. Izuku hit him. No warning, no approach. One instant, Izuku was at the gate, 50 meters away. The next instant, his fist was buried in All Might's stomach. He'd moved in the gap between All Might catching Bakugo's blast and finishing his sentence. A window of maybe half a second. Izuku had crossed 50 meters and thrown a punch in that window. The impact was seismic. The ground cratered beneath All Might's feet. The shockwave ripped through the industrial zone, bending pipes, shattering windows, sending metal debris flying in every direction. All Might slid backward 10 meters, his boots carving trenches in the concrete. For the first time in years, All Might's smile flickered. Fast, All Might said. His voice was different now, quieter. The booming confidence replaced by something more serious. Very fast. You were talking, Izuku said. Don't talk. All Might stopped talking. He attacked. A straight right, the same punch that generated air pressure waves, the same punch that changed the weather, the same punch that made him the #1 hero. It came at Izuku like a freight train wrapped in lightning. Izuku tilted his head. The fist passed his cheek close enough to shift his hair. The air pressure alone shattered every window in a 100-meter radius and sent Bakugo tumbling despite being 30 meters away. Izuku countered. His palm struck All Might's exposed ribs. Ascetic blaze erupted on contact, white fire concentrated, burning at temperatures that would have vaporized steel. All Might's hero costume caught fire. The skin beneath reddened. All Might felt it, actually felt it. Pain. The first real pain he'd experienced in combat since his fight with All for One 5 years ago. He responded with everything. What followed was a fight that the monitoring staff would later describe as the most destructive event in UA history. All Might and Izuku traded blows at speeds the cameras couldn't track. Each impact generated shock waves that demolished the surrounding structures. Pipes burst. Walls collapsed. The ground fractured into a spiderweb of cracks that spread outward from the fight like an earthquake in real time. All Might hit Izuku. A clean shot to the jaw that would have liquefied a normal person's skull. Izuku's head snapped to the side. He snapped it back. Good hit, Izuku said. He hit All Might back. Twice. 3 times. 4. Each strike wreathed in white fire, each one landing with the force of a missile impact. All Might blocked the first 2, ate the third, and was launched backward by the 4th. He crashed through a factory wall, through the machinery inside and out the other side. He came back swinging. The fight lasted 4 minutes. In those 4 minutes, ground Gamma was reduced to rubble. The entire industrial zone, every building, every pipe, every structure was leveled. The monitoring staff had to evacuate to backup positions twice. 3 cameras were destroyed. The seismic sensors registered readings equivalent to a magnitude 4.7 earthquake. Bakugo, who'd been trying to find an opening to contribute, ended up crouched behind the only remaining piece of wall in the entire zone, watching two titans tear the world apart around him. His palms crackled with unused explosions. His teeth were clenched so hard, his jaw ached. He couldn't get in. Not because they wouldn't let him. Because the speed of the fight was beyond anything his body could follow. By the time he identified an opening, it was gone. By the time he aimed an attack, both combatants had moved. He was watching a fight in a language he couldn't speak. It ended when Izuku planted his feet, caught All Might's final punch between both palms, and redirected the force downward into the ground. The concrete exploded beneath them in a 20-meter crater. In the same motion, Izuku released All Might's fist, stepped inside his guard, and placed his palm flat against the hero's chest. Tau pulsed. Not fire, not force, pure life energy. Pressed against All Might's body like a tide against a seawall. All Might's muscles locked, his body refused to move. Not from injury, from the sheer overwhelming presence of Izuku's energy overriding his nervous system. Yield, Izuku said. All Might looked down at him. The symbol of peace. The strongest hero in the world. Looking at a 19-year-old boy with white hair and dead eyes and scars that told stories no teenager should have. I yield. All Might said. Izuku withdrew his hand. The Tau pressure vanished. All Might sagged, not falling, but settling, his muscles releasing tension they'd been holding at maximum output. Exam complete, the intercom announced. Midoriya and Bakugo pass. Bakugo hadn't done anything. He knew it. Izuku knew it. The whole monitoring room knew it. As they walked back to the gate through the ruins of what used to be Ground Gamma, Bakugo was silent. Not angry. Not this time. Something deeper. How? Bakugo asked. One word. Izuku glanced at him. How are you that strong? Izuku considered the question. It deserved an honest answer, even if he didn't owe one. I died once, Izuku said. Lived a whole life before this one. Spent it fighting things that make All Might look gentle. Came back and got recruited by people who turned me into a weapon before I was old enough to understand what that meant. He paused. That's how. Bakugo stared at him, searching for a lie, finding none. That's insane, Bakugo said. Yeah. They walked in silence for a while. Around them, the dust was still settling. I'm going to surpass you, Bakugo said. Not a shout, not a threat, a statement, delivered with the same flat certainty Izuku used when he stated facts. Maybe, Izuku said. You work hard enough. Bakugo blinked. It was the closest thing to a compliment Izuku had ever given anyone who wasn't Toga. In the monitoring room, All Might sat in a chair with an ice pack on his ribs. He'd reverted to his skeletal form. His hands were shaking, not from fear, from the realization of what he'd just experienced. He was holding back. All Might said to Nezu, who was sitting beside him sipping tea. Yes, Nezu agreed. Even at the end, when he had his hand on my chest, he could have... Yes. All Might was quiet for a long time. He's stronger than me, Nezu, not just physically, in every way that matters in a fight. His technique, his instincts, his ability to read an opponent. I've never encountered anything like it, not even from All for One. Nezu took a sip of tea, and yet he wants nothing more than to go home and eat dinner with his wife. Is that enough to keep someone like that contained? Nezu's smile was enigmatic. Love is the only chain that holds willingly, All Might, and willing chains are the only ones that last. All Might thought about this. Then he thought about the boy with white hair walking out of a demolished testing ground, checking his phone for texts from his wife. I hope you're right, All Might said. Summer arrived. UA's training camp was held in a remote mountain forest, a sprawling wilderness owned by the Wild Wild Pussycats, a pro-hero team that specialized in outdoor rescue operations. The plan was simple. 5 days of intensive quirk training in the woods. Fresh air, team building. Growth, Izuku packed a bag. Toga stood at the door of their house, watching him with her arms crossed. 5 days, she said. 5 days. Without me. It's a school trip. 5 whole days. That's practically a lifetime. I'll waste away. They'll find my skeleton clutching a photo of you. You'll be fine. I'll starve. There's food in the fridge. I labeled everything. She pouted. It was devastating. Call me every night. Every night. And send pictures of the forest. I like trees. I'll send tree pictures. She stood on her tiptoes and kissed him. He leaned down to meet her halfway. He always leaned down now, a compromise they'd reached after she complained about getting a neck cramp. Be safe, she said, always. And be nice to your classmates. I'll try. Liar. He almost smiled. Almost. The bus ride to the training camp took 4 hours. Izuku sat at the back with his eyes closed, headphones in, listening to nothing. The other students chattered around him, excited, nervous, buzzing with teenage energy. He let the noise wash over him like rain. The camp itself was fine. Grueling by normal standards, dawn to dusk training, quirk exercises designed to push students past their limits, minimal rest. Izuku did everything asked of him at maybe 10% effort and spent the rest of the time sitting against trees with his eyes closed, sensing the flow of Tao through the forest. Trees had Tao, animals had Tao, the earth itself had Tao. In this place, far from the city, the energy was clean and strong, and he let it flow through him like water through a filter. On the second night, he called Toga from the edge of the campsite. "How's the forest?" she asked. "Green." Descriptive. "Did you send me tree pictures?" "I sent 7. I need at least 12. I'm building a collection." He took 5 more pictures and sent them while she narrated her day. A funny customer at the store, a new curry recipe she wanted to try. The cat from the alley she'd named it Moki had showed up at their door again. "I miss you," she said. "I miss you too." "Say it again. I miss you too. One more time." Himiko. Okay. Good night, Hollow-kun." "Don't call me that." "Good night." He hung up. Stood in the dark at the edge of the forest. The stars were bright here, brighter than they ever got in the city. He could hear owls, crickets, the distant sound of Bakugo yelling at Kaminari about something irrelevant. His Tao stirred, the prickling sensation, faint, distant, but unmistakable. Something was moving at the edge of the forest, multiple somethings, suppressing their presence, advancing in a coordinated pattern that screamed military formation. Izuku's eyes opened. The green was gone. What remained was flat, cold, and ancient. He walked back to camp. Aizawa was sitting by the main cabin, reviewing training notes. He looked up when Izuku approached. "We have company," Izuku said. Aizawa's expression didn't change. "How many?" "At least 20. Coming from the north and east, 2 heavy hitters, multiple support types. They're using the terrain for cover." Izuku paused. "And there's something in the forest. Gas, maybe. A quirk that produces some kind of airborne agent. It's spreading from the southwest." Aizawa was on his feet before Izuku finished speaking. "Students! Everyone inside, now!" The next 3 minutes were chaos. A wall of blue-purple fire erupted at the northern tree line. Not natural fire, quirk fire, burning cold and hostile, spreading through the canopy with unnatural speed. The forest lit up like a torch. Smoke billowed into the night sky. Villains emerged from the darkness. Not street-level thugs. These were coordinated, equipped, and led by someone who knew what they were doing. A man made of patchwork skin held together by staples conjured the blue flames. A lizard-like figure moved through the underbrush with terrifying speed. A masked man the size of a refrigerator cracked his knuckles, his muscles bulging with a strength-enhancing quirk. And in the chaos, a figure in a black bodysuit and top hat appeared at the edge of the campsite. Compact. Calm. He held a marble between his fingers. Compress. A quirk that could compress anything into a small marble, including people. The pussycats engaged the initial wave. Aizawa disappeared into the tree line, capture weapon flying. Students scattered, some toward the cabin, some toward the fight, some frozen in shock. Izuku didn't scatter. He stood in the middle of the campsite and let his Tao expand outward like a radar pulse. He mapped every hostile signature in the forest. 23 total. 3 high threat. The rest were fodder. The big one, Muscular, he heard someone call him, came for Izuku first. He burst through the burning trees like a freight train, his muscle fibers expanding outside his body, wrapping around his frame like organic armor. Each fiber was as strong as steel cable. Layered together, they formed a shell of meat and sinew that could absorb and redirect massive impacts. "Found you," Muscular roared, grinning with manic bloodlust. "The Hollow. They said you'd be the fun one." "They were wrong," Izuku said. Muscular threw a punch. His augmented fist was the size of a car engine. The muscle fibers contracted and expanded on impact, multiplying the force by an order of magnitude. The hit that connected would have pulverized a building. Izuku caught it. One hand, open palm, Muscular's fist slammed into it with enough force to generate a shockwave that flattened the grass in a 20-meter circle and sent nearby students stumbling. Izuku didn't budge. "You're interrupting my sleep schedule," Izuku said. "My wife will be mad if I'm tired tomorrow." "You're wa!" Izuku squeezed. Muscular's augmented fist compressed. The muscle fibers, each one capable of stopping a bullet, crumpled and ruptured like wet tissue paper. Muscular screamed. Blood sprayed from between Izuku's fingers. Izuku pulled him forward, off balance, flailing. Then he drove his knee into Muscular's stomach with enough force to lift the massive villain off the ground entirely. The muscle armor around his torso shattered on impact. Ribs broke, organs compressed. Muscular folded around Izuku's knee like a rag doll and launched backward, crashing through 3 burning trees before carving a trench in the earth. He didn't get up. One hit. The villain, who'd been sent specifically to fight Izuku Midoriya, taken out with a single knee strike. Izuku turned to the rest of the forest. His Tau flared. White fire ignited along his arms. What followed was not a battle. It was pest control. He moved through the burning forest like a wraith. Villains appeared in his path and ceased to be conscious. He didn't use techniques. He didn't need to. A chop to the neck, a palm to the sternum, a flick to the temple. Each strike was measured to incapacitate, not kill. Toga had asked him to be nice, and he was trying. But the speed and precision were inhuman. He cleared the northern sector in 40 seconds. The eastern sector in 30, but Compress tried to marble him. The villain appeared behind Izuku with the casual confidence of someone who'd never had his quirk fail. His hand shot out, fingers closing around Izuku's shoulder. The compression activated, the quirk that reduced three-dimensional objects to pocket-sized spheres. The quirk that had captured dozens of heroes and civilians. The quirk that was supposed to be absolute. It broke. Izuku's Tau pulsed outward from the point of contact. The compression field hit his energy and shattered like glass against stone. The backlash traveled up Compress's arm and into his body. He felt every cell in his hand seize simultaneously. He stumbled backward, clutching his wrist, his fingers numb and trembling. "That's not..." Compress started. Izuku turned around. The firelight carved shadows across his face. His pale green eyes reflected the flames like mirrors. "Your quirk manipulates physical matter," Izuku said. "My body isn't just physical matter. My Tau is woven into every cell. You can't compress what you can't contain." He hit Compress once. The villain folded and dropped. In total, Izuku cleared 13 of the 23 attackers by himself in under 3 minutes. Aizawa and the Pussycats handled most of the rest. A few escaped into the forest, carrying their wounded, fleeing into the darkness like animals running from a wildfire. The blue flame villain, Dabby, was among those who escaped. So was a girl with knives. And a man in a black coat who'd been watching from the ridgeline the entire time, recording everything on a device that transmitted to a location Izuku's Tau couldn't reach. By dawn, the forest was a smoldering wasteland. Black trees stood like skeletal fingers against the gray sky. The campsite was half destroyed. Several students were injured, none critically, thanks to Aizawa and Izuku's quick response, and 2 Pussycats needed medical attention. Izuku sat on a rock at the edge of the destruction, his phone in his hand. He'd already texted Toga, "I'm fine. Some villains attacked. Handled it." Her response was immediate. "What? Are you hurt? Do I need to come there? I'll fight them myself. Send me the address." He typed back, "I said I'm fine. I'll be home soon. Love you." 17 heart emojis. A sticker of an angry cat with boxing gloves. Then, "Love you too. Stay safe or I'll kill you myself." He pocketed the phone, stared at the ruined forest. The attack hadn't been random. It was targeted, coordinated. The League of Villains knew exactly where the camp was, exactly when the students would be there, and exactly who they wanted to engage. They'd sent Muscular for Izuku specifically, which meant someone had intelligence on him. Good intelligence. And that meant someone was watching. He filed that thought away in the cold, clinical part of his brain that never slept. The part that had been trained since age 6 to identify threats, assess risks, and plan countermeasures. Someone was watching. He'd deal with it when the time came. The Hideout raid happened 2 weeks later. Police and pro-heroes traced the League of Villains to a bar in Camino Ward. Simultaneously, they located a facility linked to the League's benefactor, a shadowy figure that intelligence agencies had been chasing for decades. The plan was a two-pronged assault. Police raiding the bar, a team of top heroes hitting the facility. Izuku wasn't supposed to be there, but Nezu had called him the night before. A private conversation. The principal's voice was uncharacteristically serious. "The League's benefactor is a man called All for One," Nezu said. "He is, in my estimation, the most dangerous individual in Japan, possibly in the world. He possesses a quirk that allows him to steal and bestow other quirks. He is centuries old. He has accumulated power on a scale that defies measurement." "What do you need from me?" Izuku asked. "Backup. Unofficial. If All Might falls, someone needs to be there to prevent a catastrophe." Izuku looked at Toga, who was curled up on the couch reading manga. She looked up, sensing his gaze, and tilted her head. "One condition," Izuku said into the phone. "I'm home by morning." Agreed. So Izuku went to Kamino Ward. He stayed in the shadows, on a rooftop half a kilometer from the facility, his Tau suppressed to near zero. Invisible to every detection method known to modern science, he watched All Might fight All for One. It was the most destructive combat he'd witnessed since his previous life. Two titans clashing in the heart of a city, generating forces that leveled buildings, cratered streets, and shook the earth itself. All Might in his muscled form, straining at the limits of One for All. All for One in his ruined body, a faceless monster wielding stolen power like a conductor wielding an orchestra. Izuku assessed them both. All Might was stronger but fading. His power had a time limit, and each blow he threw cost him. All for One was weaker individually but endlessly adaptive, cycling through stolen quirks like tools in a toolbox, probing for weaknesses, exploiting openings. The fight tipped. All Might delivered a final blow, United States of Smash. Every remaining drop of One for All poured into a single punch that shattered All for One's defenses and drove him into the ground. The villain fell. Heroes swarmed in. Restraints were applied. But in the seconds before the final blow, something happened. All for One's faceless head turned toward Izuku's rooftop. He couldn't have seen him. Izuku's presence was completely suppressed. He was a ghost, a void in the sensory landscape. But All for One's head turned as if drawn by a magnet, as if he could feel something that his stolen quirks couldn't detect. "Interesting," All for One said, his voice carrying through the chaos with unnatural clarity. "There's something old out there, something that doesn't belong to this era." He smiled. That lipless, noseless, eyeless smile. Then All Might hit him and it was over. All Might retired that night. The symbol of peace, depleted of One for All, standing before cameras in his skeletal form, pointing at the lens and saying, "Now it's your turn." Izuku watched from the rooftop. He felt nothing about the speech. It wasn't meant for him, but he filed something away. In those final seconds, All for One had sensed him, which meant All for One had been aware of his existence, which meant the information gathered during the training camp attack, the recording, the intelligence, had reached its intended destination. All for One knew about Izuku Midoriya, and people who knew about Izuku Midoriya eventually learned about Himiko Toga. He went home. "How was it?" Toga asked from the couch, still reading manga at 3 a.m. because she'd refused to sleep until he returned. "All Might retired." "I saw. It's on every channel." She patted the couch next to her. He sat. She leaned against him. "Are you worried?" "About what?" "About not having All Might as a safety net." He looked at her. "I've never needed a safety net." "I know, but the world did." She was right. He didn't say so out loud. He just put his arm around her and watched the news coverage until she fell asleep on his shoulder. The provisional hero license exam was held at Takoba National Stadium. Izuku went. Nezu told him the pardon required it. He passed in 9 minutes, faster than anyone in the exam's history. When the examiner asked him to demonstrate rescue procedures, he carried 6 victims out of a simulated disaster zone simultaneously, 3 under each arm, moving so fast they experienced mild G-forces. "That's not standard rescue protocol," the examiner said. "They're alive, aren't they?" Izuku replied. He passed. The interesting part happened during the lunch break. Izuku was sitting alone on the stadium steps, eating a bento that Toga had packed, rice, tamagoyaki, little octopus-shaped sausages, when she appeared. She'd snuck in. Of course she had. She was wearing a visitor badge that she'd somehow acquired, he didn't ask how, a yellow sundress and a grin that could power a small city. "Surprise," she announced, dropping into the seat beside him. "How did you get in here?" "The security guy at Gate C thinks I'm your sister." We look nothing alike. I was very convincing. She stole one of his octopus sausages and ate it. "How's the exam?" "Easy." Obviously. A group of students from Shiketsu High School walked past. One of them, a tall boy named Yoarashi Inasa, all enthusiasm and wind-based power, stopped dead when he saw Izuku. His face went pale. "That's your Thor, the Hollow," he stammered. Toga waved. "Hi, I'm his wife." Inasa looked at Toga, looked at Izuku, looked at Toga again. His brain was visibly struggling to reconcile the information. "His wife?" "Yep." Toga pointed at her ring, then at Izuku's. "Matching." "But he's and you're how?" "I fed him a protein bar once," Toga said, as if that explained everything. To Izuku it did. The story spread through the exam venue within an hour. By the end of the day, every student from every school knew that the terrifying white-haired monster from UA had a cute blonde wife who packed him bento boxes with octopus sausages. Several people expressed disbelief. A few expressed jealousy. One girl from Ketsubutsu Academy cried for reasons she couldn't articulate. On the train home, Toga leaned against Izuku's shoulder and scrolled through social media on her phone. Someone had taken a photo of them on the stadium steps. Izuku eating his bento with his usual dead expression while Toga leaned against him with her sundress and her smile, and posted it with the caption, "The Hollow has a wife, and she's adorable?" "We're trending," Toga said. "Great. You should smile more in photos. People run when I smile. Assert dominance." He looked at her. She grinned up at him, all teeth and sunshine. The same grin she'd given him on a rainy rooftop 2 years ago when she was starving and alone and he was covered in blood and empty. The same grin that had saved his life. His mouth twitched. Just barely. Not a smile. But close. The Shi Hasaikai operation began 3 weeks later. Sir Night-Eye, the former sidekick of All Might, a man with a quirk that allowed him to see the future, requested a meeting with Izuku before the raid. Nezu arranged it. They met in a conference room at the Hero Agency. Night-Eye was tall, thin, and severe. His face looked like it had been carved from ice. He extended his hand to Izuku, a handshake that would activate his foresight, allowing him to see Izuku's future for up to an hour. Izuku shook his hand. Night-Eye's quirk activated. He looked into Izuku Midoriya's future and saw nothing. Not darkness, not blankness. Nothing. His quirk reached for Izuku's timeline and found a void, an absence where a future should have been. As if Izuku Midoriya existed outside the flow of causality entirely, unmoored from the river of time that every other human was swept along by. Night-Eye dropped Izuku's hand. His face had lost all color. "What are you?" Night-Eye whispered. "People keep asking me that," Izuku said. "My quirk, I can't see your future. That's never happened, not once, in 15 years of active use." Izuku considered this. "I've lived before," he said. "A different body, a different time. My soul carries the weight of 2 lifetimes. Maybe your quirk doesn't know how to read something that's been through the cycle twice." Night-Eye stared at him. The analytical mind behind those sharp eyes was spinning, processing, trying to fit this information into a framework that didn't have room for it. "If I can't foresee your future," Night-Eye said slowly, "then my predictions about the raid may not account for your actions. You're a variable I can't calculate." "Good," Izuku said. "I've never been good at following plans anyway." The Shi Hasaikai compound was a fortress buried beneath a Yakuza estate in the suburbs. The raid involved multiple hero teams hitting different entry points simultaneously. Izuku was assigned to the primary assault team alongside Night-Eye, Fat Gum, and several other pros. The compound was a maze, rotating rooms, trapped corridors, quirk-enhanced architecture that shifted and reformed around the invaders. The Shi Hasaikai's members fought with the desperation of cornered animals, using quirks and weapons and the terrain itself to slow the heroes down. Izuku didn't slow down. He walked through walls. Literally walked through them. His Tau-enhanced body was denser than any material the Yakuza had built with, and he simply punched through concrete and steel without breaking stride. Rotating rooms that tried to redirect him shattered when he pushed against them. Traps triggered and bounced off his skin. He reached the deepest level of the compound in under 2 minutes. The heroes behind him were still fighting through the upper floors. Overhaul was waiting, Kai Chisaki, the leader of the Shi Hasaikai, a man with a quirk that allowed him to disassemble and reassemble anything he touched, including people. He stood in a vaulted underground chamber, wearing his Plague Doctor mask, his golden eyes calm and calculated. Behind him, a small girl was huddled in the corner. She had white hair, red eyes, a small horn on her forehead, bandages wrapped around her arms, covering wounds that Izuku recognized instantly. Not injuries. Harvesting marks. They were using her. Her quirk, whatever it was, they were taking it from her body the way you drain blood from a donor. Izuku looked at the girl, at the bandages, at the fear in her red eyes, and something cold and sharp moved through his chest. He knew this. He'd been this. A child in a facility used by adults turned into a tool. The Commission had done the same thing to him. Different methods, same result. A person reduced to a resource. Overhaul, Izuku said. Chisaki tilted his head. The Hollow. I've heard about you. The Commission's pet monster. Let the girl go. She's not your concern. She's a product, a means to an end. Her quirk will reshape the world. Eliminate quirks entirely. Order from chaos. You of all people should understand the value of tools. I understand the value of people, Izuku said. Let her go. Last warning. Chisaki laughed behind his mask. It was a dry, clinical sound. Or what? Izuku moved. Chisaki was fast. Faster than expected. His hand shot out, fingers spread, aiming for Izuku's face. If he made contact, his quirk would activate. Disassemble. Break apart at the molecular level. Even Izuku's durability might not survive having his atoms rearranged. Might not. Might. Izuku didn't give him the chance to test it. Though he slapped Chisaki's hand aside with his left palm, a deflection that broke two of the Yakuza leader's fingers and drove his right fist into Chisaki's elbow. The joint shattered. The arm bent backward. Chisaki screamed. Izuku grabbed the other arm. Twisted. The shoulder dislocated with a wet pop. He swept Chisaki's legs, dropped him to the ground, and systematically broke every limb. Both arms. Both legs. Clinical. Precise. The way you disassemble a weapon. Then he pressed his palm against each broken joint and pulsed his Tau. Heat. Focused, controlled, cauterizing. The tissue around each break seared shut. Not healing. Sealing. Fusing the broken bones in their displaced positions, making them heal wrong, permanently. Chisaki would never use his hands again. The quirk that required touch was rendered useless by hands that would never properly close. Chisaki screamed throughout. When it was over, he lay on the floor of his underground fortress, every limb twisted and cauterized, his mask cracked, his golden eyes wide with a horror that had nothing to do with pain and everything to do with the realization of what had been taken from him. You. My hands, Chisaki gasped. You can't. I need my hands. My work. Your work involved torturing a child, Izuku said. His voice was the coldest it had been since the execution chamber. Be grateful I let you keep them attached. He turned away from Chisaki and walked toward the corner where the girl was huddled. He knelt. The girl flinched. Of course she did. She'd just watched him destroy the most powerful person in her world in seconds. She was shaking. Her red eyes were wide and wet. Izuku looked at her. Really looked. Past the fear and the trauma and the bandages, he saw a child. Just a child. Small and scared and hurt in ways that went deeper than the marks on her arms. He sat down on the floor, cross-legged, making himself small, non-threatening. He placed his scarred hands on his knees, palms up where she could see them. What's your name? He asked, softly. A voice he only used with Toga now extended to this girl because she needed it more. Eri, she whispered. Eri. That's a nice name. He paused. Those people hurt you. Her lip trembled. She nodded. They told you that you were a thing, a tool, that your only value was what they could take from you. Tears spilled down her cheeks. She nodded again. They were wrong. His voice was firm, not loud, but certain. The way he stated facts, the way he told the truth. You're not a tool. You're a person. You're a kid who got dealt a bad hand by people who should have protected you. That's not your fault. None of it is your fault. Remember that. Eri stared at him, at his scarred hands, like at his flat green eyes that had something behind them now, something warm and real and hurting on her behalf. You're scary, she said. Small voice, honest. I know. But you're nice too? He considered this. My wife thinks so. Eri uncurled from her huddle. Slowly, like a flower opening after rain. She reached out one small bandaged hand and touched his palm. He let her. Her hand was cold. He wrapped his fingers around it gently, carefully, like holding a baby bird. He channeled a thin thread of Tao into her. Warm, stable, gentle energy that flowed through her small body and pushed back against the exhaustion and trauma. When the other heroes finally reached the bottom level, they found Izuku sitting on the floor with Eri asleep in his lap, her head against his chest. Chisaki was unconscious in the corner. The room was silent. Night Eye looked at the scene. Then he looked at Izuku. Something in his expression shifted, the clinical detachment replaced by something softer. Uncertain. "You saved her," Night Eye said. "I picked her up," Izuku corrected. "Anyone would have." But they both knew that wasn't true. The cultural festival was Toga's favorite day of the year, not because of the performances or the food stalls or the music, because she got to visit Izuku's school. She arrived at the gate wearing a floral dress and a sun hat, carrying a homemade bento box roughly the size of a small suitcase. "I brought lunch for your whole class," she announced. The students of Class 1A met Toga for the first time and experienced a collective short circuit. This was the wife. This tiny, bubbly, blonde girl with the gap-toothed smile and the cat-shaped purse was married to the most terrifying person they'd ever met. "You're so cute," Uraraka said, grabbing Toga's hands. "No, you're cute," Toga said, grabbing hers back. "We're both cute." They became instant best friends. Izuku watched this development with a mild sense of dread. Toga passed out bento boxes to every student. She'd made each one individually with different contents based on what she'd heard from Izuku's sparse descriptions of his classmates. Bakugo's had extra spicy karage. Todoroki's had cold soba. Ida's was meticulously organized. "Your wife is an angel," Kirishima told Izuku, mouth full of rice. "She burned the kitchen down last week trying to make creme brulee," Izuku replied. "An angel with fire powers." During the festival's concert performance, Class 1A had somehow convinced Jiro to lead a band. Toga sat in the audience next to Izuku. She leaned against him, her head on his shoulder, her hand in his. The music played. The crowd cheered. Confetti fell. Izuku smiled. Not the almost smile. Not the twitch. A real, full, genuine smile that lit up his face and made him look his age for the first time since he was 6 years old. Uraraka saw it from the stage and nearly dropped her microphone. Todoroki saw it and felt something loosen in his own chest. Bakugo saw it and looked away, his jaw tight with an emotion he'd never admit to. Toga looked up at him and her golden eyes went wide. "Izuku, you're smiling. I know. A real smile. I know." She kissed his cheek. "I'm taking a picture." "Don't." She took the picture. She made it her phone background. She showed it to every student in Class 1A. By the end of the day, the photo of Izuku Midoriya genuinely smiling had been shared across every class group chat in UA. That evening on the way out, a man calling himself Gentle Criminal attempted to break into UA for an internet stunt. Izuku sensed him at the perimeter. He excused himself from Toga for 30 seconds, appeared in front of Gentle Criminal and his partner La Brava at the East Gate, and stood there with his hands in his pockets. "I would recommend leaving," Izuku said. Gentle Criminal took one look at him, turned around, and left. "Smart man," Izuku said, and went back to his wife. Joint training between Class 1A and Class 1B happened a week later. 5-on-5 matchups. Izuku was in the 5th and final round. The students of Class 1B had heard the stories, seen the footage. They knew what was coming. They'd spent the entire week strategizing, planning, building specific counters for one man. None of it mattered. When the round started, Izuku walked forward into the practice zone while his 4 teammates stayed at the start point. He didn't tell them to stay back. They just did. Self-preservation, Class 1B's team attacked with a coordinated assault. A Vine user created barriers, a steel-skinned fighter led the charge, a beast transformation quirk flanked left, a size manipulation quirk flanked right, and Shinso Hitoshi, the mind control student who'd been added to the hero course, hung back and called out, "Hey, Midoriya, I heard your wife packs your lunch. That's pretty." Izuku ignored him. Shinso's quirk, brainwashing, activated when a person responded to his verbal provocation. Izuku didn't respond. His Tao flowed through his mind like a clear river, washing away external influences before they could take root. Brainwashing brushed against his consciousness and slid off like water off stone. Shinso's eyes widened. He didn't even. Izuku dropped all 5 opponents in 11 seconds. Not brutally, he'd been practicing restraint per Gran Torino's training. Controlled strikes, measured force. Each opponent went down clean and woke up a minute later with nothing worse than a headache. But the precision was somehow more frightening than raw power. He hadn't just beaten them. He'd calibrated the exact amount of force needed to incapacitate each individual based on their quirk, their build, and their defensive capabilities, and he delivered it without a single wasted movement. Round 5. Class 1A wins, the referee announced. Terrifying, Monoma from Class 1B whispered. Efficient, Vlad King corrected from the sideline, though his face was pale. The months that followed were quiet, too quiet. Izuku sensed it the way animals sense earthquakes, not through any specific signal, but through the absence of one. The League of Villains had gone silent. No attacks, no sightings, no intelligence chatter. After years of escalating activity, USJ, Hosu, the training camp, Camino, the sudden silence was deafening. Something was building. Reports trickled in through channels Izuku shouldn't have had access to, but did. The League had merged with the Meta Liberation Army, forming the Paranormal Liberation Front, an army of over 100,000 quirk users, organized, radicalized, and waiting. Shigaraki Tomura had disappeared into a facility run by a doctor named Garaki. Rumors of a procedure, an enhancement, something that would push Shigaraki beyond anything he'd been before. In that facility, in a capsule filled with nutrient solution, Shigaraki Tomura floated between consciousness and evolution. His body was being rewritten. All for One's power, the original quirk, stolen and passed down and accumulated over 2 centuries, was being grafted into his flesh. When the procedure was complete, Shigaraki would have the combined power of his own decay, All for One's stolen arsenal, and a body enhanced to contain forces that would tear a normal human apart. Dr. Garaki stood before the capsule, monitoring vitals. Behind him, a screen displayed dossiers of every major hero in Japan, their quirks, their weaknesses, their personal connections. One dossier was highlighted, Izuku Midoriya, codenamed the Hollow, and beneath it, a photograph. Himiko Toga, spouse. The Hollow has one weakness, Garaki murmured, tapping the photograph. His attachment to that girl. Every piece of intelligence confirms it. He is invulnerable to physical harm. He is immune to quirk-based attacks. His power is immeasurable. But threaten her, remove her, and you remove his stability, his control, everything that keeps the weapon aimed in the right direction. Inside the capsule, Shigaraki's hand twitched, his fingers curled. Even unconscious, even mid-transformation, some part of him was listening, planning. Heroes launched their own preparations. Intelligence operatives identified the PLF's primary bases. Tactical plans were drawn up. Teams were assigned. Riposte, the largest coordinated hero operation in history, took shape over weeks of careful planning. Izuku was briefed by Nezu personally. The principal's usual cheer was subdued. His small eyes were serious. This will be war, Nezu said. Not a raid. Not a skirmish. War. Tens of thousands of combatants on both sides. The casualties could be... I understand, Izuku said. You'll be assigned to the primary assault team targeting Shigaraki. We believe he's undergone a transformation that may make him the single most dangerous being on the planet. More dangerous than me? Nezu looked at him. That remains to be seen. Izuku went home. The night before the operation, their house was warm. The curry was spicier than usual. Toga's way of handling stress. She cooked aggressively when she was worried. They sat at the kitchen table. Mochi the cat slept on the windowsill. Cherry blossoms drifted past the glass. You're going tomorrow, Toga said. Not a question. Yeah. She reached across the table and took his hand, his scarred hand in her small one. The silver rings clinked together. Promise me you'll come back, she said. He looked at her, at the golden eyes that had saved him, at the smile that had filled the hollow space behind his ribs, at the woman who had looked at a blood-soaked weapon and seen a person worth loving. Always, he said. Promise. I promise, Himiko. I will always come back to you. She squeezed his hand. He squeezed back. They went to bed early. Toga curled against him, lowy, her face pressed into his chest, her breathing slow and warm against his skin. He held her with both arms and listened to her heartbeat and memorized the sound because he memorized everything about her. Always, every day, in case the world tried to take it from him. He didn't sleep. He never slept well before operations. The commission had trained that into him. The night before a mission was for planning, for mental preparation, for sharpening the blade. But tonight, he didn't plan. He just held his wife and breathed and existed in the warmth of a moment he was terrified might be the last. At 4 a.m., he eased out of bed. Toga stirred. "Go back to sleep," he murmured. Izuku, her hand caught his wrist. Her eyes were open, gleaming in the dark. "I love you." He leaned down and kissed her forehead. "I love you too. I'll be home for dinner." "You'd better be. I'm making katsudon." He dressed, black combat clothes, not a hero costume, not a school uniform, the same kind of fitted dark fabric he'd worn for 13 years of assassin work. Old habits. He clipped his locket around his neck, the one with her picture. He slid on his silver ring. He looked at himself in the bathroom mirror. White hair, pale green eyes, scars. The Hollow. No, not anymore. Not just that. A husband. Going to war so he could come home. He walked out the door and didn't look back because if he looked back, he might not leave. The operation launched at dawn. 3 simultaneous strikes across Japan. Heroes, police, military support, every available resource deployed against the Paranormal Liberation Front's strongholds. Thousands of combatants clashed across multiple fronts. The scale was unprecedented. The violence was immediate. Izuku was deployed to the Jaku Hospital front, the location where intelligence indicated Shigaraki was being held. The assault team included Endeavor, Eraserhead, Mirko, Crust, and 24 other top-ranked heroes. Their objective was simple: neutralize Shigaraki before his transformation was complete. They were too late. The assault team breached the hospital's underground levels and found the chamber where Shigaraki's capsule had been. The capsule was empty. Nutrient fluid pooled on the floor. The monitoring equipment was dark. "He's gone," Eraserhead said. "How long?" "Minutes," a support hero reported, checking the equipment. "The awakening was triggered remotely. We missed him by..." The ceiling exploded. Not collapsed. Exploded. Upward. Concrete, steel, earth. Tons of material launched into the sky as something punched through the hospital from below. The shockwave knocked everyone off their feet. Heroes tumbled. Equipment shattered. The underground chamber split apart like an egg. Shigaraki Tomura rose through the destruction like a god, climbing out of its grave. He was different. The greasy-haired, hand-covered man-child from the USJ was gone. In his place stood something else. His body was larger, taller, denser, packed with muscle that hadn't been there before. His hair was longer, wilder, white-gray like storm clouds. The hands were gone from his body. His face was bare. His eyes were wrong. 2 sets of awareness lived behind them. Shigaraki's manic fury and something older, colder, more calculating. All for one's consciousness, threaded through his successor's mind like a virus through a network. He stood in the ruins of the hospital and looked down at the assembled heroes with an expression that combined Shigaraki's contempt with all for one's amusement. "Heroes," Shigaraki said, and his voice had 2 layers, his own rasp and a deeper, smoother undertone that belonged to the ancient villain living inside him. "You're early. I'm not quite dressed." He raised his hand. 5 fingers spread. Decay erupted from his palm. The ground disintegrated. Not just the concrete, the earth beneath it. Rock, soil, underground infrastructure. Everything within 100 meters of Shigaraki's hand dissolved into gray dust that spread outward at terrifying speed. Buildings collapsed, streets caved in. The hospital, the entire hospital, crumbled to nothing in seconds. Heroes scattered. Some were fast enough, some weren't. Crust, the shield hero, ranked 6th in Japan, threw himself between the decay wave and a group of slower heroes. His shield quirk absorbed the disintegration for 3 seconds. Then it ate through his shields. Then through him. He turned to dust with a smile on his face. "No!" Endeavor roared, flames blazing. Mirko launched herself at Shigaraki with a flying kick that could shatter concrete. Shigaraki caught her leg. The decay started at her ankle and raced upward. She wrenched free, losing a chunk of her calf in the process, and retreated, blood spraying. Eraserhead activated his quirk. His eyes locked onto Shigaraki. Erasure engaged. Shigaraki laughed. That might have worked on the old me. He had multiple quirks now, all for one's stolen arsenal. Erasure could only target 1 quirk at a time, and Shigaraki had dozens. He cycled through them faster than Aizawa could erase. Super regeneration, shock absorption, air cannon, rivet stab, forced activation. An endless cascade of power that overwhelmed the simple binary of erasure like a river overwhelming a dam. Aizawa's eyes burned or strained. It wasn't enough. Shigaraki flicked his fingers. An air cannon blast caught Aizawa in the chest and launched him backward. The hero hit a collapsed wall and went still. Endeavor attacked. Hellflame, his most powerful technique, concentrated fire hot enough to melt tungsten. He poured everything into it, turning the air into a column of white-orange destruction that engulfed Shigaraki completely. When the flames cleared, Shigaraki was standing in the same spot. His skin was blackened but regenerating. New tissue formed beneath the char, pink and fresh, pushing outward. Cute. Shigaraki said he hit Endeavor with 3 quirks simultaneously. The number 1 hero went down, hard, his flame beard extinguished. His body crashed through 2 collapsed walls and lay still. In the span of 4 minutes, Shigaraki had neutralized the top heroes in Japan, and he was still warming up. Then Izuku arrived. He came from above, a straight vertical drop from the smoke-filled sky, falling like a meteor, Tau blazing around his body in visible waves that distorted the air. He landed 30 meters from Shigaraki. His feet hit the ground and the earth cracked outward in concentric circles. Dust billowed. Debris scattered. Izuku stood up straight, hands at his sides, dead green eyes locked onto Shigaraki. "There you are," Shigaraki said. Both layers of his voice resonated with anticipation. "The Hollow. I've been waiting for this." "I haven't been waiting for you at all," Izuku said. "You're in my way and I have dinner plans." Shigaraki grinned. It was an ugly, layered expression. Shigaraki's manic teeth and all-for-one's calculating smile overlapping like a double exposure. "Let's see if you make it to dinner." He attacked. Shigaraki covered the 30-meter gap in a heartbeat. Decay erupted from both hands, spreading through the ground and air simultaneously, a sphere of disintegration that consumed everything in its path. Behind the decay wave, he threw a punch reinforced with 5 different strength-enhancing quirks. Izuku stepped through the decay, the disintegration hit his Tau field, and stopped. Dead. The gray dust reached his skin and dissolved, not him, the decay itself. His life energy was too dense, too deeply woven into his physical form, for molecular disintegration to find purchase. Decay needed something to break down. Izuku's body wasn't breaking down for anyone. Shigaraki's fist connected with Izuku's raised forearm. The impact was the loudest sound the battlefield had heard. A shockwave tore outward, leveling every remaining structure in a 200-meter radius. The ground cratered. The sky filled with dust. Izuku's arm didn't move. "My turn," he said. He hit Shigaraki in the face. Ascetic blaze erupted on contact. White fire concentrated into his knuckles, burning at temperatures that exceeded the surface of the sun. Shigaraki's head snapped backward. His cheek caved in. The skin flash burned down to the bone, revealing the skull beneath. Shigaraki stumbled back. His regeneration kicked in immediately. Tissue regrew, bone reformed, skin layered over fresh muscle. In 3 seconds, the wound was gone. But the pain wasn't. Shigaraki touched his face with trembling fingers. The ghost of the damage lingered, his eyes widened. "That hurt," Shigaraki said. "Nothing's hurt since the procedure." "Get used to it," Izuku said. They clashed. Full force, no holding back. The fight was unlike anything the world had ever seen. 2 beings operating at a level of power that redefined what was possible. Each exchange of blows generated shockwaves that flattened buildings. Each burst of ascetic blaze melted the terrain to glass. Each decay wave from Shigaraki consumed everything it touched, except Izuku. Izuku fought with the precision of a master and the power of a catastrophe. His Tau burned through his body in rivers of white-hot energy, fueling techniques that spanned 2 lifetimes. Ascetic blaze, rock pillar. Ninpo movement that turned him into a blur. He hit Shigaraki from every angle, at every speed, with every tool in his vast and terrible arsenal. Shigaraki fought back with stolen quirks and overwhelming destructive power. Air cannons, forced limb activation, impact inversion. The combined force of 100 stolen abilities wielded by a consciousness that had 200 years of combat experience encoded in its genes. He threw everything at Izuku, tidal waves of disintegration, concussive blasts, black tendrils that erupted from his body like living weapons. They tore the landscape apart. A kilometer in every direction from their fight was leveled. Flattened, reduced to rubble and dust and glass. Heroes who tried to approach were blown back by the ambient energy discharge. The air itself was ionized, crackling with static, glowing faintly. charged with so much Tau and quirk energy that it had become a physical medium. Izuku landed a combination that would have killed any other being on Earth. A palm strike to the sternum, rock pillar, full force, followed by a spinning kick wreathed in ascetic blaze that caught Shigaraki in the ribs and launched him through what used to be a city block. Shigaraki crashed, bounced, and carved a trench half a kilometer long. He got up, regenerated, grinned. Izuku appeared in front of him and hit him again. Harder. The ground beneath them exploded downward, creating a crater 30 meters deep. Shigaraki hit the bottom. Izuku was already there, meeting him with another blow. The crater deepened, expanded, became a canyon. Shigaraki regenerated. Izuku destroyed him faster. Shigaraki adapted, layering quirks into defensive configurations, hardening, shock absorption, spatial distortion. Izuku punched through all of it. Minutes passed. Each one felt like an hour. The two of them fought with an intensity that bent the rules of reality, and neither one could land a decisive finish. Shigaraki, because Izuku was simply beyond physical harm. Izuku, because Shigaraki's regeneration wouldn't stop, wouldn't slow. The stolen super regeneration, enhanced by All for One's accumulated power, rebuilt Shigaraki's body as fast as Izuku could destroy it. Faster sometimes. He'd burn through the healing factor in one area and it would compensate from another. He'd overload one system and another would pick up the slack. It was the Nomu problem scaled up 1,000-fold. A regeneration factor backed by the combined energy of 100 stolen quirks, fueled by a body designed from the ground up to be immortal. For the first time in this life, Izuku Midoriya was in a fight he couldn't finish quickly. He felt something he hadn't felt in a very long time. Not fear, not doubt, irritation. This was taking too long. Toga was making Katsudon, then Shigaraki stopped fighting. He pulled back, stood in the middle of the devastation, the scorched earth, the glassed craters, the smoking ruins of what used to be a city, and smiled. Both sets of eyes gleamed. Shigaraki's mania, All for One's calculation. "You're strong," Shigaraki said. "Stronger than All Might ever was. Maybe the strongest thing that's ever lived." "Stop wasting my time," Izuku said. "But you have a weakness." The world went cold. The temperature dropped. Izuku felt it, not in the air, but in his gut. A premonition, a warning from the deepest part of his survival instinct, the part that had kept him alive through 2 lifetimes of violence. Something was wrong. Shigaraki reached into the pocket of his torn clothes and pulled out a small device, a phone. He tapped the screen. A holographic projection flickered to life between them. Blue-white light, high definition, crystal clear. The image showed a room, a small room, familiar walls, familiar curtains, yellow curtains with little flowers on them. Their house. Toga was in the center of the frame. She was being held by 2 figures, a man made of patchwork skin and staples, and a woman with a knife quirk. Dabi's hand was on her shoulder, blue flames flickering at his fingertips. The knife woman had a blade against Toga's throat. Toga's golden eyes were wide. She was scared. Izuku had never seen her scared. Not like this, not the raw, helpless animal fear of someone who knows they can't fight their way out. "Izuku," Toga said on the feed, her voice shaking. "Izuku, I'm sorry. They came through the back door. I couldn't." Dabi's hand tightened on her shoulder. Blue flame kissed her skin. She cried out. The sound of her pain cut through Izuku like a blade through flesh, like nothing had ever cut him before. No weapon, no quirk, no technique from any era had ever penetrated his body. This did. Her cry went through his skin, his muscle, his bone, and found the center of him, the place where Himiko Toga lived, the place that had been hollow for a lifetime and a half until she filled it. "The hollow has a heart after all," Shigaraki said. His layered voice dripped with satisfaction. "How poetic. All for One told me about her before before we became one. Your wife, your weakness." He tilted the screen so Izuku could see every detail. The blade at her throat, the fear in her eyes, the blue flames scorching her shoulder. "I'll kill her slowly, Midoriya. I'll make you watch, and then I'll take everything you are and I'll..." He didn't finish the sentence because the air ignited. It didn't happen gradually. It happened like a switch being thrown in the core of the sun. One instant, the battlefield was the aftermath of a catastrophic fight. Smoke, dust, ruins. The next instant, the world was white. Izuku's Tau erupted. Not flared, not pulsed, erupted. The energy that had been flowing through his body in controlled rivers since the fight began tore free of every restraint, every limiter, every carefully maintained boundary. he'd built over 19 years of existence. It exploded outward from his body like a supernova expanding from its origin point, a sphere of raw, incandescent, annihilating life energy that turned the air to plasma and the ground to light. His eyes changed. The pale green burned away, replaced by something brighter, something that actually glowed, like stars compressed into the space of human irises. White fire erupted across his body, not on his skin but from within it, radiating through every cell, every molecule, every atom. His hair rose. His scars blazed with light, each one a line of fire on his skin, mapping every wound he'd ever taken in 2 lifetimes, and turning them into channels for a power that had no ceiling. The temperature in a 1-mile radius spiked. Not by degrees, by orders of magnitude. The air itself caught fire. Buildings that had been reduced to rubble spontaneously combusted, steel frames glowing orange, then white, then collapsing into slag. The ground beneath Izuku's feet didn't just melt, it sublimated. Solid to gas in an instant, leaving him standing on nothing but raw energy, suspended above a crater that was widening by the second. Heroes who'd been watching from what they thought was a safe distance staggered back. Hawks, half a kilometer away, felt his feathers start to smolder and retreated further. Endeavor, barely conscious, looked up from where he'd fallen and saw something that made the #1 hero, a man made of fire, feel cold. Izuku Midoriya was no longer human. He was an inferno in the shape of a man. A pillar of white flame that rose from the earth to the sky, turning clouds to steam, turning air to nothing, turning the battlefield into a hellscape that would be visible from space. And his voice, when he spoke, was quiet. Too quiet. A whisper that carried across the burning landscape with absolute clarity, heard by every person within a mile despite the roar of the flames, despite the crack of melting earth, despite the howling wind. "You can threaten the world," Izuku said. "You can try to kill me. You can destroy everything." He took a step toward Shigaraki. The step left a footprint of white glass in the air itself, a solid imprint of heat so intense it had fused the atmosphere into a crystalline structure that lasted for a full second before shattering. "But you do not touch my wife." Shigaraki's face, for the first time in the entire fight, showed fear, real fear, not Shigaraki's fear. All for One's. The ancient villain whose consciousness lived inside him, who had lived for 2 centuries, who had faced every threat the world had ever produced, that consciousness recognized what was happening and was afraid. "Decay!" Shigaraki shouted, both hands thrust forward. Maximum output. A wave of disintegration larger than anything he generated before. A wall of gray death that consumed everything in its path. Spreading outward in an unstoppable tide, Izuku walked through it. The decay hit his Tau field and ceased to exist. Not deflected, not resisted, erased. His energy was so far beyond the molecular disassembly of Shigaraki's quirk that the decay simply couldn't function in his presence. The gray dust touched his white fire and evaporated into base particles that had no instructions, no purpose, no coherence. Shigaraki threw everything. Air cannons that shattered the sound barrier. Black tendrils reinforced with hardening quirks. Forced activation of the ground beneath Izuku's feet. Energy blasts, impact waves. Every quirk in his stolen arsenal fired simultaneously in a panicked barrage that would have obliterated a city. Izuku walked through all of it. The attacks hit his body and broke, shattered, dissolved. His Tau was a force of nature now, not a river but an ocean, not a flame but a star, not a weapon but a fundamental truth of the universe asserting itself. Quirks were genetic mutations, products of biology. Subject to the laws of physics, however loosely, Izuku's power came from somewhere older, deeper. A force that predated quirks, predated civilization, predated the current configuration of the world. Tau was life itself, the raw, unfiltered energy of existence, and Izuku was channeling enough of it to rewrite the rules. He reached Shigaraki. The villain tried to run. All for One's tactical mind overrode Shigaraki's stubborn fury and sent his body backward, retreating, trying to create distance. Useless. Izuku closed the gap between one heartbeat and the next, his hand closed around Shigaraki's face. "Ninpo," Izuku said. White fire concentrated, not around his body, into his hand. Into the point of contact between his palm and Shigaraki's skull. The energy compressed, folding in on itself, layering, multiplying, until it reached a density that existed only in the hearts of dying stars. Ascetic blaze. Shigaraki's regeneration activated. Every stolen quirk in his body devoted itself to survival. Healing factors stacked on healing factors, cellular reconstruction running at maximum speed. His entire biological system focused on the single task of not dying. Izuku's fire burned through all of it. The regeneration couldn't keep up. The healing factors that had rebuilt Shigaraki through an entire fight, that had shrugged off Endeavor's flames, that had reconstructed him from Izuku's earlier attacks, buckled, collapsed. The fire was too hot, the energy too concentrated, the Tao too absolute. He was burning through the quirks themselves. Not just the flesh, the quirk factors, the genetic structures that housed stolen abilities. One by one, the quirks in Shigaraki's body went dark, burned out like fuses in an overloaded circuit. Air cannon, gone. Hardening, gone. Shock absorption, gone. The stolen arsenal that had made Shigaraki the most dangerous being on the planet erased by a fire that burned at the interface between matter and energy. Heaven's cremation. The white fire reached critical mass. What happened next? The surviving witnesses would describe in different ways. Some said they saw a pillar of light. Some said they felt a wave of heat that seemed to pass through solid objects without burning them. Selective, targeted, impossibly precise. Some said they heard nothing at all, just silence, total silence, as if the explosion was so far beyond the audible spectrum that human ears simply refused to acknowledge it. The cameras showed this, a sphere of white light expanding from Izuku's hand, engulfing Shigaraki's body, expanding outward for exactly 30 meters and then stopping. Clean, sharp, a perfect boundary. Inside the sphere, annihilation. Outside, nothing. Not a scratch, not a scorch mark, not a displaced pebble. Izuku had contained it. Even in the depths of his berserk fury, even with his Tao burning at levels that should have leveled the prefecture, he'd controlled it, focused it, aimed it at one target and one target alone. The sphere collapsed. Where Shigaraki Tamura had been standing, there was nothing. No body, no ash, no residue. The atoms that had composed his physical form had been excited past any state of matter, past any molecular configuration, past any possibility of reconstruction. Super regeneration couldn't rebuild what no longer existed on a subatomic level. Shigaraki Tamura was gone. Not dead. Gone. Erased from physical reality so completely that there was nothing left to call a corpse. The only trace was a faint shimmer in the air, heat distortion that would linger for hours. A ghost of the energy that had passed through this space. Izuku stood alone in the silence, his white fire guttered, dimmed. His Tao receded from its apocalyptic peak, draining back into his body, leaving him standing in a crater of smooth glass that reflected the sky like a mirror. His eyes faded from blazing white back to pale green. His hair settled, his scars stopped glowing. He looked at his hand, the hand that had held Shigaraki's face. It was unburned, unharmed. Steady, he turned to the holographic projection device that Shigaraki had dropped. It was slag now, melted by ambient heat, but the last image it had displayed was seared into Izuku's retinas. Toga, scared, hurting. The rage hadn't subsided, the fire was banked, but the purpose was absolute. He had to get to her. Now, he moved. The heroes on the battlefield saw Izuku Midoriya turn south and vanish. Not run, not fly, vanish. The same ninpo displacement he'd used in the entrance exam, but scaled up, covering not meters but kilometers, crossing the distance between the Jakku ruins and Musutafu in a series of jumps that ate geography like a stone skipping across water. Hawks tried to track him from the air, lost him after the second jump. Where did he? Hawks started. Home. Endeavor rasped from the ground, one eye swollen shut, his body broken but his mind sharp. He's going home. Izuku covered 60 kilometers in under a minute. He materialized on his street, their street, the quiet residential road in Musutafu with the cherry trees and the garden gates, and saw the front door of his house hanging open. He was inside before it finished swinging. The living room was trashed, furniture overturned, the TV knocked off its stand. Mochi the cat was hiding under the couch, hissing. Signs of a struggle. Toga had fought, of course she had, she always fought, but the damage was concentrated. Short. They'd overwhelmed her quickly. The yellow curtains were torn. One of them was on the floor. The little potted plant, the same one she'd bought for their first apartment years that she carried to every home they'd shared, was knocked over. Soil spilled across the counter. Izuku's fists clenched. The silver ring bit into his finger. His Tao expanded. He searched, scanned. Every life signature in a kilometer radius, cataloged in an instant. There, 3 blocks south. An alley behind a closed restaurant. 3 signatures, 2 hostile, 1 familiar, one that he knew better than his own heartbeat. He moved. Dabi heard him coming, or rather, Dabi felt something shift in the air, a pressure, a wrongness, the sensation of standing in the path of an avalanche. He looked up from where he was crouched in the alley, one hand still on Toga's shoulder, blue flames idle but ready. Dabi started. Izuku materialized in the alley entrance. His white hair was disheveled. His combat clothes were scorched. His eyes were the flattest, deadest, most terrifyingly empty they had ever been. The killing intent rolling off his body was so thick that the knife woman, Toga Himiko's captor, dropped her blade involuntarily. Her hand simply opened and let go. Overridden by a survival instinct that her conscious mind couldn't suppress, Dabi tried to fight. Blue flames erupted from both hands. A wall of fire, hot enough to melt steel, filling the narrow alley from wall to wall. It was his strongest output, the flames that burned even him, that ate through his own damaged skin that he paid for with his body every time he used them. Izuku walked through the blue fire. It parted around him. His Tao didn't even flare. The flames simply couldn't touch him. Not now. Not after what he'd just done. His body was still resonating with the aftershocks of heaven's cremation. At this moment, there wasn't a force on earth that could harm him. He grabbed Dabi by the throat. The patchwork villain's eyes went wide. His flames died. He clawed at Izuku's hand with both arms, skin tearing at the staples. "Your boss is dead," Izuku said. "Erased. There's not enough of him left to fill a thimble. Your war is over." He dropped Dabi. The villain crumpled, gasping, clutching his throat. The knife woman was already unconscious. She'd fainted from the killing intent. Izuku stepped over them. Toga was on the ground, her back against the alley wall. Her yellow dress was torn. There was a burn mark on her shoulder where Dabi's flame had touched her. A thin line of blood on her neck from where the knife had been. Her golden eyes were wet with tears but fierce. Even now, even scared, even hurting, she was looking at him with defiance and relief and love all at once. "Izuku," she started. He dropped to his knees in front of her. The killing intent vanished. The dead eyes came alive. The flat expression cracked open, and underneath it was something raw and desperate and terrified. "Himiko." His hands reached for her face. They were shaking. The same hands that had erased the most powerful villain in history moments ago were trembling as they touched her cheeks. He cradled her face with a gentleness that bordered on reverence. "I thought I lost you," he said. His voice cracked. Not a small crack. A devastating one. The voice of a man who had stared into the only abyss that scared him. "I thought. When I saw the feed, I thought I was too late." "I'm okay," Toga whispered. She pressed her hands over his, holding them against her cheeks. "I'm right here. You found me. You always find me. Your shoulder, the burn, it's nothing. It's already stopping. And your neck, a scratch. Barely a scratch, Izuku. Look at me." He looked at her. His eyes were bright with unshed tears. The Hollow, the weapon, the most dangerous human being in 2 lifetimes, crying in an alley because someone had threatened the woman he loved. "You saved me," she said. "You saved everyone. It's over." She smiled. "The real one, the small one, the one that was just for him. You kept your promise. You came home." He pulled her into his arms. He held on so tight that she squeaked. "Too tight, Izuku." He loosened his grip, barely. "I would have burned the whole world," he said into her hair. His voice was raw, wrecked. "If they'd hurt you, if anything had happened, I would have burned everything." "I know." She pressed her face into his chest. "That's why I need to stay safe. I can't have you torching the planet every time I get a paper cut." He almost laughed. It came out as something between a sob and a breath. He held her tighter. They stayed in the alley for a long time. Dabi was unconscious. The knife woman was unconscious. Sirens wailed in the distance. The world was still at war, technically, though the death of Shigaraki had shattered the PLF's leadership and the remaining forces were fragmenting. None of that mattered right now. Eventually, Toga pulled back. She wiped his eyes with her thumbs. Small gestures, gentle, the same tenderness she'd shown him that night in their first apartment when she'd pressed his bloodied hand to her cheek. "Izuku," she said. What time is it?" He blinked. He checked his watch. The face was cracked but functional. Survivor of a battle that had leveled a prefecture. The date registered first. Then the time, his expression shifted from the raw emotion to something softer, confused, then disbelieving, then warm, so warm it didn't look natural on his scarred, battle-worn face. Himiko, what? It's our anniversary. Toga blinked. She looked at the watch on his wrist. Read the date. Read it again. She started laughing, not the big, bright laugh from happy times. The slightly unhinged, post-adrenaline, I can't believe this is real laugh. The kind that bubbles up when the world is too absurd to process and all you can do is let it out. You're kidding, she gasped. You literally just, and it's our anniversary? 2 years since the rings. You vaporized a supervillain on our anniversary. Apparently, she laughed harder. He felt his own chest shake, not with sobs this time, with laughter. A real, genuine, slightly deranged laugh that he couldn't have stopped if he tried. They sat in an alley next to two unconscious villains, Toga with a burned shoulder and a bloody neck, Izuku with cracked combat clothes and tear tracks on his cheeks, and they laughed until they couldn't breathe. When the laughter subsided, they looked at each other, the golden eyes and the green, the gap-toothed smile and the ghost of one. It's over, Izuku said. His voice was steady now, certain. The war, the League, Shigaraki, all of it, it's done. Really done? Not done for now? Really done. I don't make a habit of half measures. She studied his face, searching for doubt, finding none. Then I have one question, she said. What? Are you going to take me somewhere nice for our anniversary, or are we going to spend it sitting in an alley next to unconscious criminals? He stood up, offered his hand. She took it, and he pulled her to her feet. The katsudon at home is probably cold by now, he said. I can reheat it. Or, he said, we could go somewhere with tablecloths. Toga's eyes widened. Izuku Midoriya, are you asking me on an anniversary date? I'm asking my wife to dinner. She threw her arms around his neck. He caught her. He always caught her. And he carried her out of the alley and into the street, where the morning light was breaking through the clouds and the cherry blossoms were falling and the sirens were fading and the war was over. The world could wait. Tonight, this morning, whatever time it was, he was taking his wife to dinner. The restaurant Izuku found was a small izakaya 3 blocks from their house that somehow hadn't been touched by the chaos. The owner was sweeping the entrance when they arrived, a young man in an apron who took one look at Izuku's scorched clothes and Toga's torn dress and didn't say a word. He just held the door open and led them to a corner table. It had a tablecloth. White linen, Toga noticed immediately. Look, she whispered, tablecloth. I see it. This is fancy. It's an izakaya. A fancy izakaya with tablecloths. They ordered. Izuku ate with the steady, measured pace of someone who'd been trained to eat efficiently. Toga ate with the enthusiastic abandon of someone who'd almost died and was celebrating being alive by consuming her body weight in yakitori. Between bites, she talked. About the attack, how Dabi and the knife woman had come through the back door, how she'd fought them with a kitchen knife, and actually cut Dabi once before they'd overpowered her, how she'd screamed his name even though she knew he couldn't hear. I knew you'd come, she said. Even when they said you were fighting someone impossible, even when they showed me footage of the battle and everything was on fire, I knew. How? Because you promised. She shrugged like it was the simplest thing in the world. You always keep your promises. He reached across the table and took her hand, the silver ring on his finger, the silver ring on hers. Both still there. Both survived. I killed him, Izuku said. Toga looked at him. The villain, Shigaraki. I killed him. I know. Not captured, not defeated, killed. There's nothing left of him. She squeezed his hand. Do you feel bad? He thought about it. Really thought. Searched inside himself for guilt, for regret, for the weight that used to crush him after every commission mission. No, he said. He was going to hurt you. He was going to destroy everything. I did what I had to do. He paused. But I don't feel good about it either. I just feel done. Done is enough, Toga said. Done means it's over. Done means we can go home and you don't have to fight anymore. No more fighting. No more league. No more war. Just us. Just us. She lifted his hand and kissed his knuckles. The same hand that had ended Shigaraki Tomura. Her lips were warm against his scarred skin. Happy anniversary, Izuku. Happy anniversary, Himiko. They finished dinner. They walked home through the cherry blossoms. Toga leaned against him the whole way, her head on his shoulder, her hand in his. The neighborhood was quiet. The crisis was resolving itself across Japan, PLF forces surrendering en masse as word of Shigaraki's death spread. But here on this street, in this moment, the world was small and still and perfect. Their house was still a mess. They cleaned it together. Toga righted the furniture. Izuku fixed the door. They repotted the plant. They hung the curtains back up. Mochi emerged from under the couch and demanded food. By the time they were done, it was past noon. Toga stood in the kitchen doorway and surveyed their restored home. It wasn't perfect. There were still scuff marks on the floor, a crack in the wall where someone had been thrown against it. The TV was beyond repair, but the yellow curtains were up. The plant was on the windowsill. The rings were on the counter where they'd set them while cleaning. Home, Toga said. Home, Izuku agreed. She picked up both rings. She slid his onto his finger first, then her own. A small ceremony. A renewal. We should get married again, she said. For real this time, with a ceremony and guests and a cake. We are married for real. I mean with a dress and flowers and you in a suit. I don't own a suit. We'll buy one. I bet you look amazing in a suit. I look like a mortician in everything. A handsome mortician. The most handsome mortician. He looked at her, standing in their kitchen wearing a torn yellow dress and a borrowed apron, her hair a mess, a bandage on her shoulder, curry sauce on her cheek from where she'd started reheating the katsudon. Beautiful. The most beautiful thing in 2 lifetimes. Okay, he said. A ceremony. Guests. A cake. Whatever you want. She lit up. The glow of her smile filled the kitchen the way it filled every room she was in, completely, absolutely, leaving no corner untouched. I love you, Hollow-kun. Don't call me that. Hollow-kun, 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 he sighed. The sigh of a man who'd won a war and lost every argument with his wife and wouldn't trade either outcome for anything. I love you too, Himiko. 3 weeks later, the world was different. The Paranormal Liberation Front was dismantled. Its leadership was dead or imprisoned. The hero world was restructuring, new rankings, new agencies, new systems designed to prevent the kind of institutional rot that had produced both the Commission and the League. The Commission itself was under investigation. The files from their Black Operations Division, the same division that had recruited a 6-year-old boy and turned him into a weapon, were being reviewed by a civilian oversight board. People would go to prison. Systems would change. It wouldn't fix everything. It never did. But it was a start. All Might was retired. Permanently. He visited UA sometimes in his skeletal form, and the students who'd known him as the symbol of peace treated him with a reverence that made the thin man uncomfortable. He was writing a memoir. It was terrible. Izuku knew because Toga had somehow gotten an advance copy and was reading it out loud at dinner for comedic effect. Endeavor was recovering from his injuries. Todoroki was dealing with the fallout of his family's public exposure. Bakugo was training harder than ever, driven by the burning need to close a gap that might be unclosable. The students of Class 1A were growing, learning, becoming the heroes they'd always wanted to be. And Izuku was in his kitchen, cooking. He stood at the stove in a plain white t-shirt and sweatpants, hair tied back with one of Toga's scrunchies, following a recipe on his phone. The recipe was for a specific curry, rich, complex, with layers of spice that required careful timing and attention. He'd been working on it for 2 hours. In another life, on another island, in another body, he'd cooked for someone he loved. The muscle memory was faint. A ghost of a ghost, filtered through centuries and reincarnation. But it was there, the instinct to feed someone you cared about. The satisfaction of creating something with your hands that wasn't violence. He was learning, slowly, imperfectly. The first attempt had been inedible. The second had been edible, but sad. The third had been good enough that Toga ate it without making a face, which he counted as a victory. This one, the fourth, smelled right. Actually right. The spices had bloomed. The sauce had thickened. The rice was fluffy. Toga walked in from the garden. She'd been watering her flowers. She'd planted a whole row of them along the back fence, pink and yellow and white, and she tended them every morning with the focused dedication of someone building something permanent. Are you cooking? She said. Don't sound so surprised, Izuku. You're cooking. In our kitchen, with an apron. He looked down. He was, in fact, wearing an apron. It was the one with the cartoon bear holding a spatula. He didn't remember putting it on. Toga gave me this apron, he said. I am Toga. Then you should remember. She hopped up on the counter and dangled her legs, watching him stir the curry. Her golden eyes tracked his movements with the same intensity she'd once used to study blood. Analytical, fascinated, hungry. "It smells amazing," she said. "It's not done. It smells done. Smelling done and being done are different things. You know what else is done? The war, the League, the Hero Commission's investigation, your pardon paperwork, all of it." She kicked her feet. "Which means, technically, your deal with Nezu is fulfilled. You could quit UA tomorrow." Izuku stirred the curry. He'd thought about this. The deal had been, attend UA, get a pardon. The pardon was processed. The deal was complete. He had no obligation to continue. "I'll finish the year," he said. Toga's eyebrows rose. "The class needs stability after everything that's happened, and..." He paused, stirred. "I told a little girl that she was a person, not a tool, that she deserved a normal life. If I quit now, I'm saying that advice was for her, but not for me." "Eri?" "Yeah. She's coming for dinner next week, by the way. Aizawa's bringing her. I know. You should make this curry for her." "That's the plan." Toga smiled. "Not the big one. The small one. The real one." "Izuku Midoriya," she said. "You've gotten soft. I was always soft. I just didn't know it. You punched a man through a wall." "Softly," she laughed. He almost smiled. Mochi jumped onto the counter and tried to stick his face in the curry. Izuku picked the cat up with one hand and set him on the floor without spilling a drop. The kitchen was warm. The curry bubbled. The yellow curtains shifted in a breeze from the open window. Outside in the garden, Toga's flowers swayed. Their anniversary gift, the proper one, the one she'd planned before the world interrupted, sat wrapped on the dining table. A small box, red paper, gold ribbon. Inside were 2 new rings, not replacements for the silver ones, additions, simple bands engraved on the inside. His said, always, hers said, home. They'd exchanged them at dinner. He knew about them because he'd found the box while cleaning, and Toga was terrible at hiding things. She knew he knew. He knew she knew he knew. Neither of them said anything because the pretense was part of the joy. He plated the curry, 2 bowls, perfect portions. He set them on the table, the real table, the one with legs and everything, and sat down. Toga sat across from him. She looked at the curry, looked at him, looked at the wrapped gift on the table. "Happy anniversary," she said. "For real this time. No supervillains." "No supervillains," he agreed. "No league. No league. Just us. Just us." She picked up her spoon, took a bite, chewed. Her eyes went wide. "Izuku, what?" "This is good. Thank you. No, like, really good. Like, better than mine good. I wouldn't go that far. I would. What the hell? How is this so good? You've been cooking for 3 weeks. I'm a fast learner. You're an overachiever is what you are." She took another bite and another. Her eyes were shining. "You made this for me. Obviously, you learned to cook for me. Who else would I cook for?" She put down her spoon. She reached across the table and grabbed his hand. "I love you," she said. "I love you so much it's stupid. I love you more than blood, and you know how much I love blood. That's concerning. It's romantic. It's both." She squeezed his hand. He squeezed back. The silver rings clinked together, the same sound they'd made every day since she'd slid them on, a tiny metallic note that meant everything. "Izuku? Are you happy?" The question. The same one she'd asked on the couch after the USJ when he'd said he wasn't unhappy and she'd said that wasn't the same thing. The same question that had followed him through months of school and training and war and healing. He looked at her across the table, at the golden eyes, the messy buns, the curry on her cheek because she always got curry on her cheek. He looked at the kitchen, the yellow curtains, the potted plant, the cat sleeping on the windowsill. The house they'd filled together, piece by piece, color by color, until there was no empty space left. He looked at his hands, the scarred hands, the killing hands, holding a spoon and a wife's fingers and nothing else. "Yeah," he said, "I'm happy." And he meant it. Not the careful, qualified, not unhappy of before. Not the trying that he'd offered as a placeholder. This was the real thing. The feeling he'd spent 2 lifetimes searching for, without knowing its name. Happy. Complete. Full Toga's eyes filled with tears. The happy kind. "That's all I ever wanted," she said. "That's all I ever wanted to hear." He stood up, walked around the table. She stood up too. He pulled her into his arms and held her the way he always held her. Like she was made of glass, like she was the most precious thing in the world, like he'd burn everything else to the ground before he let her go. Welcome home, Izuku, she whispered against his chest. I'm home, Himiko, and I'm never leaving again. He kissed her. Outside in the garden, the cherry blossoms were falling. Pink petals drifted past the kitchen window, catching the lamplight, fragile and perfect and beautiful. They landed on the windowsill, on the potted plant, on the flowers Toga had planted along the fence. They landed softly, like snow, like the end of a long story settling into the place where it was always meant to rest. Inside, the curry went cold. The gift sat unwrapped. Mochi batted a cherry blossom that had drifted through the open window, and Izuku Midoriya, the Hollow, the weapon, the assassin, the reincarnation of a shinobi who had crossed death itself for love, stood in his kitchen, holding his wife, and felt the last empty space in his chest fill up and overflow. He'd lived twice, died once, killed more people than he could remember, and saved more than he'd ever know. But this moment, this warmth, this small and ordinary and utterly extraordinary life was what all of it had been for. The Hollow Man was full, and he never let go again.
The Chronos Legend roster. Huge respect to the legends fueling this journey. Your support is the engine behind everything we do. Whether you're on the front lines or reaching for the stars, you make this possible. Pro heroes, the elite front line, stepping up and setting the pace for the whole community. Rathakit, Dylan the Proud, D.I., Fire 05. Symbol of peace, the pillars of the community, the titans who keep our foundation solid and the hype alive. Yam, Christian Mullins, Bully Maguire Shadow, Amuri B, Kenneth Ponteris, Neostar Productions, Asael Cardenas, Shaquan Simmons, Thunder, Elijah Saunders, Peter Hamilton, Freddie Rose, Omega, Toxic Rune, Alexander Thompson, Remorsefuls, Black Vein, Joshua Hedrington, Aaron Abercrombie, Drift SKETR, Corey Tokars, Yan, Zero Hope 3656, Devin Black, Crow, Roberto Ramos de Cristina, Dasher Games, Ray von Crimson River, Dante Alistar, Adam Yonkers, Blood Saints, Donna Cafe, Zeph, Howie 60, Ignacio, Albert. Hope of the universe, the ultimate guardians, celestial tier supporters whose impact shines across the galaxy. Coldbane 4, The Maniac 563, Sean Brooks, Kashawn, Debbie Vo, Gvizzlns 21, LS Morningstar, Marl, Spintown, Ike Shoot X50, Greg Green, James, Quan Yen Thompson, Juan, Zeno KJ. You just watched a man nuke a villain on his wedding anniversary. If that's not cinema, nothing is. Smash that like button, subscribe for more content, and comment who should get the Gabimaru treatment next. Remember, never threaten the wife. Shit gets apocalyptic. Stay dangerous.